gets easier.
Huh?
Every day it gets a little easier.
Yeah?
But you gotta do it every day. That's the hard part. But it does get easier.
Okay.
Some days I got nothing. Got a lot to say. Some days I got nothing. Yeah, I got a lot to say, but some days I got nothing. Nothing. Yeah. Never stuck in the past tense. Barbed wire hurdles, I passed them. Shiesty cats, we outlast them. Mike said, never let them grind you down. If you shine for now, then you could rise to the crown. But I don't need that hat. Just loving light in the weed pack. I've seen my family relapse, fall to the ground with knees cracked. They rise again like suns with a vengeance. My lungs, they get replenished when the hope is reinvented. I've been venting to my friends about death and whatever is next. I get a lot of answers, but it doesn't change the quest. I'm strange at best, sort of hurt at worst, but the wound doesn't measure the worth. I watch rain fall and burst and then the sky turns purple. Verbally discovering my virtue, I sing past my curfew and chew up the souls of whoever tries to hurt you. Yeah, I got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Yeah, I got a lot to say, but some days I got nothing. Some days I got nothing. Got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Yeah, I got a lot to say, but some days I got nothing. Nothing, yeah. Never stuck in the past tense. Barbed wire hurdles, I passed them. Shiesty cats, we outlast them. Mike said, never let them grind you down. If you shine for now, then you could rise to the crown. But I don't need that hat. Just loving light in the weed pack. I've seen my family relapse, fall to the ground with knees cracked. They rise again like suns with a vengeance. My lungs, they get replenished when the hope is reinvented. I've been venting to my friends about death and whatever is next. I get a lot of answers, but it doesn't change the quest. I'm strange at best, sort of hurt at worst, but the wound doesn't measure the worth. I watch rain fall and burst and then the sky turns purple. Verbally discovering my virtue, I sing past my curfew and chew up the souls of whoever tries to hurt you. Yeah, I got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Yeah, I got a lot to say, but some days I got nothing.
Welcome, everyone. I am amazingly excited about what is happening today. It is International Men's Health Week, and today we are having our Global Men's Mental Health Summit. I promise you, this is the place you want to be. This is the place you want to spend your time. Go get a friend, go get your family member. I don't care if it's your mom or your dad, your sister, your brother, anyone who has a man in their life that they love, they want to be here today. I first off want to also say happy Father's Day, family, from Coach Love, which is me, Epic Understanding, and the Global Positive Masculinity Campaign. If you like the music that you just heard, it is by Jesse the Tree Top, and the song is called Purple. I also want to give a special thanks to Global FM for all of your support. It has been amazing. I'm very appreciative of you. I'll introduce my brilliant co host. Hello, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Coach?
I'm doing excellent. Is there anything that you are most excited about today? Anything you're most excited about?
The whole thing. it's there's so many great voices that are going to be coming to the table discussing things that, frankly, I've never heard discussed anywhere else, and so I think we're going to be offering people a new view of men and masculinity that we've never seen before. I think we're going to be putting men's mental health and men's health in general kind of in the front of people's mouths where it should be.
Yes.
It has historically not been so. And the fact that we have, and well, let me rephrase that. The fact that you have done this and you have collected these really amazing, truly amazing men to talk today from a broad range of backgrounds and fields and expertise and interests. I think everybody in the audience should be not only amazed, but humbled and appreciative of the efforts that you've made.
Aw. I paid him to say that, guys.
No, she doesn't.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, without further ado, it is time for us to bring up our very first speaker. He is amazing. Azif Mustafa, you are where? Where are you in the world?
I'm currently in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
That is wonderful. I have been so impressed by your work with TEDx. I've been impressed by your work as a kindness officer. I've been impressed by your work at how you bring people together and connect them with all of your videos. I really do like that. But I see you day after day making a consistent effort to bring people together. And I think that really speaks to where your heart is. You are going to talk to us about how men connect in the East versus the West. And I personally can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Same
Thank you
here.
so much, Coach.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you. So, yeah, I am in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Coincidentally, we just had a meetup of LinkedIn users here. We had over 70 people descend on a location where we had, for the first time after the pandemic, really got to meet each other. So that was fantastic. But this topic is amazing. And Coach, as I was thinking about it, I realized that the differences between how men relate to each other in the West and the East isn't really due to geographical location. Because you could be in any country, in any part of the world, and have different ways of addressing your own masculinity and relating to other men. And what I realized was from my own experience growing up and living and being a Malaysian, um, we have had 400 years of being colonized. So we have only recently gained independence from the British Empire in 1957. If you can imagine 400 years of being colonized by different Western countries, the Dutch, the Portuguese, the British for the longest time, very briefly by Japan during World War II, and then back to the British until we gained our independence. There obviously is a huge influence on how people relate to each other, men and women, and how we think. Uh, Interestingly enough, and as I started to think about it, there's tremendous parallels between our experience here in Malaysia and the Black American experience with that a similar amount of time, not having the rights uh, as equals in human relationships. So that obviously has a tremendous impact. But as I was thinking deeper into this, Coach, what I wanted to really talk about and spend the next couple of minutes is about how other people influence how you behave as a man. And, we can't choose to suddenly opt out of our masculinity. We are men 24/7, 365. And however, there are people that come into your lives at different stages. And I want to talk about my experience as a father. I have 5 children. I raised 4 of them. My first child, he's 30 years old this year, was raised by my wife and his father. This was before I married my wife. But I have experience of raising 4 children. And throughout this journey of being a father, people will come with, some of them with good intentions, some of them not so good, I believe, but they will have advice to give you. And when the child is born, they will say, oh my goodness, this is the worst time for you. You'll never sleep again. As a father, you'll never sleep again. And this baby will stay up all night. And regardless of how grounded you are, you'll be impacted by this so-called advice, and you'll be thinking, is this really going to be the worst time? My experience is that I loved the time when my kids were babies, and there are times when I stayed up all night cradling them because they wouldn't sleep. And looking back, those were some of my fondest memories, my core memories with them, and I love them. They're not the worst times. But when they become toddlers, again, people will come and say, yo, you'll never sleep again. All you're going to do is chase after these guys because they have their legs now. They're 2 years old, and you've heard of the terrible twos, and it's going to be the worst time for you as a father. Terrible. You have to chase after them till they're about 6. So between 2 and 6, you're going to have the worst time. It's not the worst time. But people will keep saying this throughout the various phases of raising your child. And as a father, again, you will be impacted by this. And as they reach the teenage years, they're going to say the same thing. Oh my goodness, this is the worst time to be a dad, because these teenagers, they're just going to, push all of your buttons, and you're going to be terribly stressed, and it's just going to be a bad time for you. It's going to be a bad time for you. So again, what my experience is, people will want to have their say, but you're not going to let them, or you shouldn't let them, because it's not the truth. And when I look back at my history, my oldest son that I raised, he's 22 years old now, and I have teenagers in my life, and I've had a wonderful time. To be honest, of course, there's been times where it was dark and bleak and it's tough, but it's not the worst times of your life. But I got to be real. My son, I've told you, he's 22. He's in college, and he's moved out, and he's staying on his own. And I'm having a tough time adjusting to this period because, he's so close to me, but now he's so caught up with his life, and he's busy, and he's living his life. And he isn't communicating as much with me, and I don't see him, and I miss him. And as a man, sometimes you want to suppress these feelings. You don't tell people about it. You don't tell people that, oh my goodness, I cried because I couldn't see my son. Nobody's going to admit that. But to be honest, that's how I feel. I miss my boy terribly. And I don't understand why he's not calling me like he used to, and why he's not responding to messages like he used to. And perhaps there's things we need to work out. But these are times. What I'm trying to say is these times will change throughout your role as a father. And even if you're not a father, as a father figure, as the man in the household, or the man in the family, and these roles will change. Don't let anyone tell you it's going to be the worst time for you, because it's not. Don't let anyone change your perspective of being the best man that you can be, the best father that you can be, because these are the times that are so precious, and you'll have to hold on to. So that's all my sharing for today. I'd love to answer any questions if there are at a later time. I'm handing it back to Coach Love. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Before we let you go, I want you to share the quick story of, because you have you have a teenage boy, and you were holding hands. I believe you were in the airport, and you reflected in that moment about if you were in the West, that would be very unusual and strange for you to be experiencing that tender moment with such a grown child, and that men in the East connect with one another in a very tender way versus men in the West. Even when they show affection, it's kind of like, I'm man.
That is true. That is true, Coach. And well, that particular video, my son's 14 years old and is very tall. He's a huge kid. And we were walking hand in hand. Actually, it was in a mosque. It was in the Grand Mosque in Mecca.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, because my wife was filming us from behind, and all of a sudden he reached around to me, grabbed my shoulder, and kissed me on the cheek. And I hugged him tight. And it was a very, very special moment. I'm so thankful we have that on video. But I don't know if it's different in the West or East. I'm raising my child to be in touch with his feelings, and in those moments not fall into any sort of stereotypes, not having to guard himself against what people say. So this is how I was raised by my dad, and how I'm raising my kids to be true to their feelings and express their feelings whenever it comes up.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much. We'll have an opportunity to talk with you more about your perspective, because there's several questions waiting in the wings for you. But for now, I have the pleasure of bringing. I have the pleasure of bringing up Kenneth Wilson. Kenneth, you'll be coming up in just a moment. As soon as I can click the right buttons, right?
There we go.
That's what I need to do. I need to click the right buttons. Kenneth, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Coach Love?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm very humbled and thankful to have you here with us. You've been doing magnificent work with your Men of Stature platform. This is a male mentoring and brotherhood program. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep. Focusing on comradeship, brotherhood, virtue, and health. Yeah.
I think that is very unique, because when you think of mentoring, you normally think of grown man to young man. What I like about what you've built is it's about camaraderie and brotherhood as grown men.
Yeah.
That is amazing. It must be those CEO skills you have. And
No,
those is it the best-selling author skills you
no,
have?
no, it's really just seeing the need to come together. We need to come and work together, be around each other. I feel like, especially with Black men, it's just, we understand, but these are the things that traditionally we haven't been able to do. And so for me, it was just a natural thing to seek out other men. And so as I was doing it, it was like, well, we got to put something to this. We can make this happen on a large scale. So I don't think it was much of like I think it's just a lot of the things I do, at least, are for me personally, my need, seeking out, and then, just turn it into like initiatives and business and things like that.
Wow. Well, today you are going to talk with us about misplaced priorities. I cannot wait to hear what you have to share about that. Um, it's quite a brilliant topic.
Well, thank you, Coach Love, and thanks to everyone for being here for the summit and all the other wonderful men. And I'm just honored, and it's just to be able to share. And so I really want to take you all on my journey, my personal journey, and to share a couple things that, I really feel like most men never even think about and even discuss to be able to deal with, right? And so, as Coach Love was saying, some of the things I've done, I am the CEO of Men of Stature. I'm also the CEO of Black Squirrel Media, which is a media company. I am considered a safety expert. I deal with people all over the world. I'm also the recipient of the President's Lifetime Achievement Award. And I say all of those things not to throw accolades and all of that stuff out there, but to really share that, you know, I'm a workaholic. I work a lot, and in that I try to do as many things as possible in the name of helping others. And so for me, it's never been seen as work, right? This has been my passion. I feel like I'm using the gifts that God has given me to help and impact as many people as possible. And so I try to work as hard as I can to make those things happen. Because to me, like I said, it's not like work. This is me, it's every day, right? And so through all of that, that takes a lot. And I tell you, I am a husband, I am the father of 3 girls, and they love very much. And I tell you, all that sounds great. All that stuff you do out in the community, it sounds good. Until one day my wife came to me, and we have a great relationship. And she asked me a question. She said, why don't you like being home? And she said, why don't you like spending time with your family? And when she first said that, I didn't know how to take it. At first I was offended. And I'll be honest, I knew what she was talking about. Deep down inside, I knew what she was talking about. And she was really talking about me and my work, because my work has taken me all over the country. I travel a lot, especially before in those times. I would be gone almost 2 weeks out of every month, traveling here and there and doing all these things. And so when she first asked me that, I was a little offended. I said, well, what are you talking about? I'm working. Not only am I'm working, but I'm also trying to provide and be a husband and do the things that I know our family needs, and to be able to put food on the table and all of those things. But also I'm working my passions, and I felt like I was blessed to be able to do both. And my passion is also my work, and it's also income and all of those things. And so I didn't, at first I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I felt like being attacked, and I was upset. And we didn't really argue about it, but it did pierce me. I felt what she said. And deep down inside, I knew that she was right. I wasn't home. I wasn't really there to be the father. My daughters needed to see me more. I needed to be there more. She needed me more. I needed to be home around the house doing those things, and so it wasn't enough to just be the money provider and that guy and trying to do all these great things and be seen in the community. Those things I felt like were the keys to success and all those things, right? And so, that started to fester inside of me. And I was curious because I couldn't figure it out, which is another thing that bothered me too. But eventually it led me to seek help because I couldn't figure it out on my own. And that journey led me to seeing help. And I actually went to a therapist. And it was through therapy and going through that process that the discovery began. And I tell you, the first thing was it took me back to my childhood unexpectedly. I wasn't expecting that. And through therapy, the one thing is it takes you back to the childhood. That wasn't a place I really wanted to go back to, and I tell you all, for me, my childhood, my upbringing, what was pretty rough for me. I was one of those, as some men, as some people might have also experienced. I came from what they call a rough childhood, a rough community neighborhood, and in my family there was a lot of substance abuse, there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of negative things going on. And so through therapy, I began to learn that was the root of me being a workaholic. It started not when I became an adult and I wanted to work. It started because I didn't want to go home as a child. I can tell you, once I turned third or fourth grade and I began to understand what was going on in my household, I saw the drug use, I saw the violence, I saw all those things happening, and I began to see this is bad. I don't want this. So imagine being a really young kid. We're talking about, 5, 6, 7 years old, and you start to see the world around you, and you start to see how horrible it is. And so for me, instead of gravitating towards that, it took me the opposite direction. I said, I don't want to be here. And my one refuge was first school. And I started going to school, and I would do everything at school. I would try to be the best student. But not only that, I would stay after school and do everything possible. Any club, any activity, any sport. I would do anything because I didn't want to go back to the neighborhood. I didn't want to go back home. And so that became the thing I did. and I would work hard at everything. You know, I would try any and everything, stuff that I never even knew I was interested in: theater, drama, geography. I was school bank and all kinds of stuff, because that became my new home and refuge, and the people there surrounded me with love and you know, everything. So as I started getting older, I developed that work ethic. I developed that habit, that curiosity to want to explore the world, to want to learn about the world, but also that drive and fueled me to want to be able to help other people. And so as I got older and through therapy, I began to learn how that began to translate to my adult life. All I did was take those same things, that same drive, determination, anger, frustration, all of those things. As I got older, they just became mature with me. They matured and grew inside of me as I was getting older. And so by the time I was a young man, I was already so determined to take on the world and do all those things. To be honest, I never knew how to be home. As a young man, I had an apartment before I got married. I was never there. I was always out in the community. I was always out because I felt like that's the place where I had to be. But that's where it started. You know, I was just so used to being out there. And I wasn't doing anything bad, really negative things. It was just that's where I felt like that's where it was for me, to be in the community, to be boots on the ground, to be grassroots, to be learning and exploring and traveling, you know. And so naturally, that's just it became part of who I was. And so that revelation, to learn that, was so mind-boggling for me. It was something I would have never ever thought of, but it gave me the roots to why there's deeply passionate roots into my behavior and who I was at that point. You know, and so I went through that discovery, and through therapy and through help, also began to learn strategies and passions, you know, not just passions, but strategies, and how I can deal with that, how I can think about those things differently, myself differently. And so I was able to take that back home. I was able to take that back to my wife, and we were able to sit down and talk, and I was able to reveal, this is what I learned. This is where it's coming from. Once she began to learn that, she began to understand so much more about me. She knew about my past, she knew about my childhood history, but it was just eyes opening for both of us. That's okay. It all made sense now. And so through that, now we begin to come out of that, and we can talk through it, we can learn through it. And she realized it wasn't that I didn't want to be home. It's just I thought, well, I was doing, you know, the right thing for me and the family. I thought I was being that guy and providing. And so now, even now, and I'll be honest, it's something that hasn't really gone away. I still struggle with that till this day. I've learned strategies and how to work with it, you know, to be home, to work with my wife and to get input, you know, but also to show sometimes I have to say no. Sometimes I can't do everything, you know. Hey, I got a family commitment here. I can't do that right now. I can't have that meeting. I can't go there. This is also important. And so I was able to merge and incorporate, but to seek the help too. And I tell you now, till this day, you know, it has made my family unit so much stronger. It has made the bond with my wife so much better. We work alongside each other now. You know, she doesn't view it as I don't want to be there. We communicate. I mean, we do little things. We have schedules together, all the strategies that really help us, you know. And I say all this to say, sometimes we don't know. A friend of mine, Ryan Dunsey, always says we don't know our blind spots. Sometimes we don't understand the things that we're doing, sometimes in the name of good, sometimes in the name of work in our careers and our lives, but they do have an effect on our family members and loved ones if we're not taking care of those needs as well too. And so that is my journey, y'all. I just wanted to share some of those things, and hopefully hearing that in my track and as I'm building this role, hopefully that helps you all as well too. So again, thank you all for being a part of the summit. Y'all take care. Have a good one.
Oh, I got a question for you though, man.
Oh, all right, I'm here. What's going on?
So you've led quite an amazing journey through childhood, adolescence, and into an adulthood. And the thing that I connect with is I did the same thing. Like, I didn't have a good connection with my father. It was a very kind of vitriolic relationship that we had with each other, very caustic. And I didn't realize why I was never home. Like, throughout my entire life, I never realized why I was home. And this is the part of your story that caught me. And I got admittedly a little bit teary-eyed, because your journey mirrors my own in certain ways, where I just started to begin to go to therapy this last year. And I only recently got interested in men's mental health and men's rights advocacy. And when I started to go to therapy, I started to realize the reasons why I was not expressing the things that I did need to, like being home, which you don't think is an expression, but to your children and to your family, it is an expression. And it's an expression of interest. It's an expression of desire to be a member of the family instead of just the tool and the workhorse that society tells us that we're supposed to be as men.
Yeah.
And the part where I got teary-eyed is where you kind of discussed how it affected your family in a more positive way. Like I have now gained the experience that my son loves me being home.
Yeah.
He loves interacting with me. He loves being around me. You know, my oldest son wants to be around me more. My daughter wants to be around me more. But it wasn't until I went to therapy where I started to realize that I had internalized all these different feelings within me. So I really, you know, it's not so much of a question, but a statement of appreciation for the fact that you brought that up, because men's mental health is one of the most underrated, underdiscussed topics everywhere.
Yeah.
And they don't realize how much of an impact and how important it is for men to get the mental health, the access to mental health care that they really deserve.
Yeah.
So I guess the question that I do have for you is, has your life become more enriched because of therapy?
Oh yeah.
And have you gained stronger relationship ties? Because I can see from you that you have, those ties have gotten really strong with your wife. And man, you have an amazing wife, and so do I, because she embraced that. She's like, yeah, you do that, you go, you do that thing. And as a co-creator of a men's mental health support group, I've seen the benefits of that access to mental health care to them. But I'm curious, on a list of on a hierarchy of importance, where do you place mental health care for men in your opinion?
Top priority, really. I mean, if it's up there with love to me, you know, giving and receiving love, but also because if you think about men traditionally, you know, we don't have the check and balance systems that are built in for us that other, you know, like women might have. They have support groups and things like that. But typically we grow up, we're on islands. You know,
Yeah.
there's no one saying, hey, do this, do that. For me, especially, I was figuring out on my own in real time on the fly, you know, and so we're making mistakes, we're doing that, but there was no even some sort of like someone to say, hey, do this, maybe try this path, this direct. So you're doing it on your own. There is no help, there is no checkup. You know, if you think about like, and you know, I equate it to like a car. You know, your car, you gotta get an oil change every 3,000. You gotta get a checkup every so often. There's no checkup for us, you know, and until
Right.
something happens and it's almost catastrophic, that it stops you and say, wait, something's wrong here. Then you end up seeking help, and that is still a relatively new thing. You know, therapy, mental health, like you said, recent for us. You know, we're talking about 5, 10 years, maybe if that. You know,
Maybe, yeah,
if
maybe.
that, yeah. So for us, there wasn't even that avenue, or if it was there, it was seen as being taboo. You were seen as being weak, you know, so that
Right.
way you shied away from that one automatically. You know, I even did that. My degrees are in psychology. And even for me, the first thought of I was like, I don't know if I really need that, you know. I did that to myself, knowing the benefits of it. So I had to
I
stop
think
for a
that
second. Yeah.
is absolutely amazing. When you say that you have a degree in psychology and you didn't even give yourself the room to
Yes.
have insecurities, that is very powerful. Michael Tross is here to talk specifically about male insecurity. When we started to hash out his subject matter, it became broad and wide, but the through line was modern male insecurity and really how that could be tackled. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Michael Tross. He is a leader in the educational field. Specifically, he has done a lot of work in medical education with nurses and therapists and things of that nature. What's very interesting with that, though, is that Mike has a talent in the arts as a director. I find that to be such a dichotomy. It's very interesting how that works. He certainly exposed me to several plays and movies that I would have missed along the way. And so it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you 𝐌𝐄𝐍'𝐶.
Thank you so much. I grew up watching the Peanuts gang on TV. Charlie Brown Christmas was a perennial favorite. It was the first of the comics that I read after retrieving the Sunday paper from my folks. And when talking about modern male insecurity, Charlie Brown probably strikes most people as the classic embodiment. But I think that the much more important lessons, as is often the case with Peanuts, come from Linus Van Pelt and from his blanket. Linus is a pretty unassuming character. He's younger than most of the rest of the gang, but seriously far too old to be dragging around that stupid blanket, as his older sister Lucy often reminds him. But his words reveal wisdom and insight far beyond his years. He seems to have it pretty well figured out. So what is it with that stupid blanket? We've heard a lot lately about toxic masculinity. Just the phrase, if you're a guy, has to put you a bit on edge. I'm toxic? Is being a man in and of itself toxic? How can I not be toxic? And right there, in that moment, you experience something both innately human, but also innately masculine: insecurity. And maybe in talking about insecurity, we can figure out a few things. Mostly, we need to understand that just being a man is not toxic. That doesn't mean we don't have stuff to figure out or things to work on. It just means that there's nothing inherently wrong or bad, let alone toxic, about being a man. As men, and particularly professional men, we hear constantly and from almost all sides that we must project confidence. Confidence is key. Project confidence. Show no weakness. Do not under any circumstances let anyone know if you have doubts, and especially not if they are self-doubts. To be successful, project confidence. We understand immediately that this is an illusion, a false image. It is a blatant denial of the facts. But there you are, trying to project confidence. What tools do we have to make that happen? Here's some tools society expects us to have at hand. Being a sage, knowing everything, being brave, being reckless, being a warrior, being certain, being strong, being a human shield, being unemotional, being adult, being a provider, being a performer. It's not that any of these things are bad. In fact, they're all quite necessary. But we try to do them all at once, all the time. Based on our insecurities, we trade in the old, fragile blanket in for a newer model that more closely resembles and feels like armor. But the problem with armor is that while it protects, it also weighs you down. Fall in the water with your armor on, and you're likely to drown. Sometimes the armor is a title. Sometimes it's wealth, sometimes success. So what exactly are we trying so desperately to cover up, to shield? What are our insecurities? And what happens when we exchange our blankets for armor? Sometimes we become abusive, sometimes demanding, sometimes inconsiderate, unforgiving, and sometimes offensive. We might use other words, but that's just another part of the armor. It's not personal, it's business. Armor is cold. Blankets are warm. The thing is, people look at me and make a lot of assumptions. And whether you accept it or acknowledge it or not, they do the same to you. They make assumptions based on my position, my experience, based on my armor. When I polish it, it can be very shiny. But underneath, when I wrap my blanket around me, I can say, for me, I always worry that I won't know the right thing to say, the right thing to do, the right facts, figures, the next step. I worry about age. Am I getting too old? Will anybody want me around? Even when referencing Linus, I thought, boy, are my references dated, obsolete, irrelevant? Am I irrelevant? In my most recent job search, I know of 2 occasions where my age definitely played against me. I was forced to ask myself, why would anyone hire me when they can get someone younger, more energetic, probably more directable, for likely half the price? Do I know everything I need to know? When I talk to my students, I worry if I can relate. Can they relate to me? Many of my students have been people of color. Is being white a barrier? Most have been women. Is being man a barrier? I came from a home where my parents were quite dysfunctional and eventually divorced. Would I know how to raise a family? Would I be a good provider, a good spouse? Would I screw it all up and hurt people I cared about as my parents had? I worry that I am not the person I want to be. Am I a good person or merely pretending to be good? Am I really intelligent or just pretending to be intelligent? Am I a good man? Am I a man? What gives me the right to make decisions that impact other people's lives? Do I really know the next best step? Am I a hypocrite? Am I a fraud? I'm not sure if we all feel these things, or perhaps it changes from person to person. But I know this, we all have them. And rather than acknowledge them and talk about them, we've been taught that the best strategy is to cover them up, shield them, protect them, project confidence. Here's the thing about Linus. He carries the symbol of his insecurities with him. It's quite clear for everyone to see. But then something amazing happens. I've seen him use his blanket to mail a letter in a box that was well out of his reach. I've seen it transform him into a shepherd. I've seen it restore a distraught and fragile, dying Christmas tree to life. But I've never seen it used as a weapon or even as a defense. So what are Linus's insecurities? Well, bullies, mostly in the form of his older sister. His own sincerity. Is he sincere enough? Is he worthy? And, of course, separation from his blanket. We get worried about being separated from our blankets too, and from our armor. The very idea of a security blanket is to make you feel safe. Insecurities are places we feel vulnerable. Admitting those feels like exposing your weaknesses to your enemy. That's because so much of our language, so much of our society, so much of our professionalism, so much of our concept about masculinity is rooted in conflict, and particularly in war. We talk about crushing the competition, taking over the market. Exposing areas of insecurity feels almost suicidal. But if we replaced our armor with our blankets, maybe not always, but more often, if we talked about the things that make us nervous or afraid, perhaps we could live more at peace, more harmoniously. If we set down the burden of knowing everything, we become more open to the knowledge and wisdom of others. if we acknowledge that the only time someone can be truly brave is when they are truly afraid, if we understand that being reckless is not bravery, that one must in fact take chances, just not to take them when the people we care about are in the balance. Maybe if we gave the warrior a rest, we wouldn't find ourselves in unnecessary wars. Wars we create to keep the warrior occupied and to defend the revealing of our insecurities. If we allowed our own uncertainty and sought the counsel of those we trust and those around us, maybe our actions would not be toxic, but rather tonic. To be an adult, a provider, a leader, is to set the example, to face the challenges and changes, to set aside the armor of controlling others for the blanket of facing yourself. In understanding your own insecurities, you allow and make room for those of others. We don't know all the answers. We cannot control all the circumstances. What we do know, hopefully, is ourselves. What we can control is ourselves. Open the dialogue. Share the places where you're nervous, afraid, or uncertain. So what does it mean to be a man? Why are we so obsessed with proving masculinity? And what does that even mean? What is society asking of us? While the soft, vulnerable security blankets of our youth eventually become objects of ridicule, have we only replaced them with a rigid, cold, unfeeling armor in the form of sexism, misogyny, and a misguided bravado? Because in our society, the armor is expected, commonplace, even praised and rewarded. How much damage do we do to hide our insecurities? While we may have needed to abandon the soft blankets of our childhood, can we similarly outgrow the stigma that being insecure is the equivalent of being weak? Can we trade our unhealthy armor for a warm, adult-sized blanket that allows us to acknowledge what we don't know, what we fear, and what we need, and to make that blanket as useful as _𝐌𝐄𝐍'𝐶. I thank you for your time. I appreciate you guys being here, and I appreciate being part of this panel.
Woo! Wee, that was good. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I know there are a lot of questions in the chat. My heart and mind is just bubbling up and bubbling over for how good that is. We are going to allow you guys to come back up and answer some of these questions. So I'm very excited about that. So without further ado, hello. Hold on, where'd you go? Did he jump up? I think something must be wrong with his connection, but that's okay. That's okay. Here we go.
Let's hope he gets it back. Yeah.
Guys. Yeah, he'll come back and hopefully we'll there he is. There he is. All right. Go ahead, Steve, and start off our open chat, and then
Yeah.
I know a bunch of questions.
Yeah. So what an unbelievable honor it is to hear all of you men speak, because you bring a certain viewpoint to the conversation that, and we're going to hear this a lot today of, wow, I've never heard that discussed before. And that's kind of sad, honestly. I'm going to be getting teary-eyed this whole day, so bear with me. But I want to kind of go around and talk to you in the order that you came up, and kind of ask you a couple more questions and let the other guys kind of fill in here. But I'm curious, Aziz, because the way that we share affection with the men around us can be culturally very different. Something that I've noticed in the U.S. is even when men are affectionate towards each other here, there's still this fear of homophobia, right? However, on top of that, there's also an establishment of violence that comes with that. So when we give our brothers, these big giant hugs, we're patting their back really hard, right? We can't even show love and affection without being slightly violent to each other. And I'm curious what your perceptions of that is in the areas that you've been to, and how male affection manifests itself in the cultures that you've had access to.
I definitely see that, but Western culture, to be very honest, is global culture, because in the past 30, 40, 50 years, everyone in any country has really grown up with the images of Hollywood and watching TV, American shows, and it has really changed the way we interact with each other as well. I mean, we have a warrior tradition. I mean, we have had, and every culture has that as well. So this male macho-ness, I think, is historically correct, because that's how we were brought up in our ancestors were behaving towards each other. However, I have a slightly different perspective as well that I learned as I was growing up and as I was exploring a more spiritual side of my life. And in many Islamic countries, in Saudi, for example, or in Pakistan or in Afghanistan, you will see grown men, big beards like us, walking hand in hand on the street. And that is a normal sight. And it's just because they're showing brotherly love. There's nothing homophobic about it. There's nothing strange about it in those countries. But however, in countries like mine, which is very much westernized, we still have that, if somebody grabs my hand and start walking down the street with me, I myself feel that kind of weirdness. So I can't say that in my culture we behave differently. I'm very much westernized myself. So there it is.
Gentlemen, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's true. I think, even for me, no matter, and I learned, because some of my good friends are my brother. I call my brothers. They're from Pakistan, so I was able to kind of get a glimpse, even though they live in America, but even from families in their community as well too, about some of the ways they express it. Like you said, it is still very, very much Western. So I remember as a kid thinking, oh, they're just like me, they're just like us, But even we learned, I kind of learned not so much from like global, but also from like, my daughters, really. And I just share this really quick. I know it's not really so much a regional thing, but saying the words "I love you" to me, just to other men, my friends, my brothers, I say it, and it's intentional to just say, "Hey, man, bro, I love you," and we, we say that to each other, And so for me, this makes it very intentional to say it, to speak it, and kind of strips down some of those walls too.
Yes. In my men's mental health group, we've gotten into the habit of, when our day is over and we're done, saying, "Hey, love you, brother. We'll see you next week."
Yes. Yeah.
And the weird irony to that is the "I love you" never feels like it's enough. That's the part that trips me up every time, is I can't express to you, my brothers, how much I love you, because "I love you" doesn't do justice to what I feel inside. Yeah. And so as men, we oftentimes have a difficulty expressing emotions, and I'll talk about this later, but we have a difficult time expressing emotions we were never taught to feel.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that hurts me to say that.
That's the thing, because I find that I've, over the past few years, been saying that a lot more with my friends as well. But here's the real question beneath all that. We know who we are. You know who you are. Why are we so worried about people thinking we might be gay? What is that about us? And look, first of all, we approach that. There's this whole social thing about, and even now and today, when there is such acceptance or more acceptance, that inherent insecurity about who we are sexually as well as who we are personally, I think bears a strong impact on how we relate to each other physically. Like you said, we can't approach each other physically without doing a little bit of violence. If I say I love you, I kind of have to say brother, because I want to separate that from any other kind of love. Don't misunderstand, I'm not saying anything, weird or anything. But why is even that weird? Why is two men, saying I love you weird, even if it is a romantic thing? And why would it be so horrible if people thought that about us? Because whether or not it's true, we know that, and we need to be secure in who we are. And that is what needs to drive our relationships with other people, regardless of what other people think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Coach, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Yes, I want us, actually, this question is for Kenny. It is from Coach Natasha. She wants to know what developed and stood out within you to notice you need therapy. And then also, these are some of the guys that are hanging backstage that you'll get to hear from. But this is a time of open chat, so they get an opportunity to talk about some of the things that was just shared. At the same time, if you have a specific question, family, please drop it in the chat, just like Coach Natasha did, and we'll do our very best to get that answered. Kenny, go
I'd like
ahead.
to answer that question after Kenny does too, as well, because that's something that I have an interest in responding to.
Excellent.
Yeah. I think for me, honestly, the first thing was that I couldn't figure it out on my own. It was burning inside me. I knew something was wrong. I knew there was something there, and I just couldn't quite figure it out. Like I said before, my degree's in psychology, so I knew there was an avenue I could take. Like I said, I was hesitant because I felt like, nah, I got it. I can do it. that whole thing that's built up inside of us, that whole macho ego thing that you think, nah, I'll figure it out. I'll keep going. But the more and more it kept going, I couldn't, And so, even going back to my wife, she's a counselor by trade too. So it was like, okay, I need to take the next step here. And it was just the acknowledgement that I can't do it on my own first, And even for a man, that was hard for me to admit. I need some help. And it was like, okay, all right, I know I got to go. Let me go. So I kind of went almost like half reluctantly, and thinking that, okay, I'll be okay. It really probably isn't going to be anything serious. But it kind of had to strip me down. So that's what really kind of first got me there, was just I couldn't get it. It was gnawing at me, and I couldn't just figure it out on my own, And so luckily, once I got there, I went in open, to receive anything, but it was me getting there first.
Yeah. For me, it was seeing all the problems within my family, and everything that I was ever taught to do to fix the problem was making it worse. Being overly aggressively masculine with my son, not being aware that my son might need to be, raised differently. My youngest son needs to be raised differently than my oldest son or my oldest daughter. The inability to adapt to my children was one of the signs and symptoms of my inability to process my emotions and my experiences. And so what I did was I went to the therapist with the expressed intent of saying, why, quite frankly, the way that I put it is, why am I being a crappy father? What am I missing? What am I not doing? What am I not addressing? What am I not seeing in my own life, my own history? And so we progressed through my experiences through life, my drug use, because I was a meth and heroin addict for a couple of years. So I lost a good chunk of my childhood memory that I can't recall. So I don't know how much of that affects my present. How are all these things working together? Plus there's multiple other things. My daughter was kidnapped when she was 4 years old by my ex-wife. I helped bury 3 of my best friend's children, all under the age of 5. Like, there's compounding PTSD problems here. How much does that have to deal with all of this? So dealing with my mental health in a responsible way, and now moving forward into my life, having those skills, abilities, and knowledge, and acknowledgement of those experiences has created for me the ability to be an outstanding, loving, caring, and emotionally available father. And that was a great question, by the way, Coach.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Gentlemen, do you have anything that you are burning to say? I've seen like almost a question mark come over your eyes, Pastor Jeffries. What's on your mind?
You know, I was actually reading the question from someone that asked about being in touch with feelings and things, but I can also base on the turning point for me in regards to receiving counseling as well, to try and determine, you know, who am I and what direction am I going as a man? After having made a series of poor decisions in regards to relationships, because I've been through divorce, multiple divorces, and it was kind of challenging for me to understand, man, how is it that I keep winding up in these situations? And as I sat with the counselor, I'll probably talk a little more in depth when I get to my time and space to talk, but when I kept looking at the decisions I was making, I'm pretty much echoing what's already been said, that, you know, you have to take a step back and look and say, man, okay, now my dad told me when I was growing up, if everybody's saying that you're wrong, everybody's not lying. Everybody's not wrong. You need to be paying attention to what's going on with yourself. And I had to do some self-reflection, and I needed to do it with someone who could actually walk me through the process of being able to navigate through the things that I was going through in life, the decisions I was making. And as I began to do that, that's when I began to move to this space of being able to understand that manhood takes on a different shape for all of us. But for me, I needed to be able to have a connection with what I was actually, how I was getting to my decision-making processes. And I was moving so out of emotions. And that's what made me look at the question a little differently. Is, you know, the question was there of saying how in touch do I need to be with my emotions without seeming weak? I think that's kind of the question that I saw. And if you don't mind, I think I could just tackle that in about 30 seconds. I don't want to talk too much. I know a lot of
hit it. Yeah.
The reality is that we all as men are in touch with our emotions right away. The issue is that we learn to compartmentalize the different emotions. Yep. Because if you let I'm a huge Cowboys fan. You let us score a touchdown, it's on. You're going to see every gamut of my emotions. And when we lose in the playoffs, you see all of those emotions as well. It's just what I've learned to do is compartmentalize those emotions. But what I've also been able to see, and I really do believe it was very much a big part of my wife and my daughter's interaction with me to help me round off my emotions, to understand that it's okay to have these emotions because they're God-given. And it's not something for me to suppress, but for me to understand and to know that there's a time and place for specific emotions. And there's a time and place for me to be able to embrace those emotions. And there's a time and place for me to be able to say, okay, that emotion is not for this time and space. Let me tap into this one to make sure that I'm handling myself with the level of dignity and also showing some levels of leadership in this time and space as well. So I think we're all connected to our emotions. It's just that we've learned to compartmentalize those things in the time and space. That was a little more than 30 seconds.
It's still great. Still great.
Yeah, good.
That was so powerful. I'm in agreement with the chat. This is powerful. It is insightful. It is needed. And I am very thankful that we are doing it. Listen, guys, we have reached the turn of the hour, and it is time for us to take a break. We will be right back in just about 5 minutes. But in the meantime, between time, please enjoy this video.
Check. If I let heartbreak define the man I am, there wouldn't be much left to outline where I stand. They got me real confused about the way we doing things, cause deep pain is the only love we can maintain. See, I'm saying it's about time and overdue. We We start looking at the world surrounding us with different views. Maybe pick and choose a little less loosely. This generation still picking views based on a loose leaf. So I write my bars between the lines for my enjoyment. Keep my voice on, the faith strong, holy anointment. Look past what we appointed as the general in charge. Generally hard, but this generation is subpar. For my standards, I won't ever stake a claim to fame. Cause trash artists that y'all play ain't in my lane. It's out my brain, I'm out the frame, outside the focus in the game, admitting that without a shame. Cause I don't plan to be the same, I just do what I do, and I feel like I do it grand. If you disagree, come visit me, would love to shake your hand. Destroy you as a man, with words you couldn't comprehend. Knife back syllables, cut you up until your end. I value hard work and knowledge. You claim the good looks and garbage, claiming some superstardom, battling with the boredom of being classified as another rapper type. Don't match the hype, you would like, but one go blow up every night.
In terms of our perceptions, we are all alone in our mind.
All of these things fall under the general category of reality shifts.
And if there were ever any doubts about the word's rising popularity, it's real.
Yeah, so tell me what is real. Reload the Glock, is it real? Whip up the rock, is it real? She gave me top, is it real? Yeah, so tell me what is real. I hit a lick, is it real? Pants at the strip, is it real? Hand on the grip, is it real? Yeah, so tell me what is real. I load the Glock, is it real? Whip up the rock, is it real? She gave me top, is it real? Yeah, so tell me what is real. We hit a lick, is it real? Pants at the strip, is it real? Hands on the grip, is it real? Or am I wrong for my composure? Pardon me, but can't you see this life ain't bring disclosures? How the hell can I approach this? Wrapped up without a label, promise has been enabled. Therefore, I am unable to tell you that I am able to obtain a few who pray to lose, while the prey is loose. Stuck in the loop, the gander hates what's good for the goose. Another noose, disguised as chains and golden options. You rock designer, they still got you picking cotton.
Why is this word used so frequently?
Seriously, it's a pretty easy question. You should be able to answer it.
Well, it is a word that evokes many emotions in people. It's a derogatory remark that has divided people for many years.
Yeah, so tell me what is real. We load the Glock, is it real? Whip up the rock, is it real? She gave me top, is it real? Yeah, so tell me what is real. I hit a lick, is it real? Pants at the strip, is it real? Hand on the grip, is it real?
I just don't understand it. And I'm trying to understand it.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if all men count with you, if neither foes nor loving friends count on you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
I absolutely adore that poem. Thank you for sticking with us, family. The song that you just heard was gifted to us by �W𝐄𝐍'𝐒. It is called It. I'm sorry, Is It? And it is on his album Self. Our very next speaker is a magnificent guy. He's actually the CEO and founder of BOBM Publishing. I lost track of how many bestsellers he's responsible for and how many authors that he has brought to um, just success and push them forward to be best-selling authors. I mean, that's what you want your publisher to do, right? But that's not the most incredible thing about him. The most incredible thing about Sugar Ray is simply his heart and passion for people and other men. So without further ado, welcome, Sugar Ray.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here and share with all of these amazing men that have been on this panel.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. You know, what is it that you want us to get out of what you are sharing with us today?
There's so much. I'll let each. There's so many jewels and so many gems. I'll let each participant, each audience member, choose for themselves, because I just want God to use me and allow His words to be what is magnified.
Excellent. Well, let's get it started.
Yeah. So I have a question for everybody in the audience, right? And the question I have is, who's your mentor? Who is it that you look up to when you have an issue? Who is it that you can go to when you have something on your heart? Because one of the things that I keep hearing, I've heard it and I've started to see it. I want to say as many as maybe 10 years back, is that there is truly an attack on masculinity. When we look at sports, when we grew up as kids, what we learned was, have a winning mindset, a winning attitude, and then all of a sudden there's participation trophies. So a lot of times when I started even going back before the Business of Books Mastermind program, coaching program, or BOBM Publishing, my passion is and has always been the youth, the next generation. The reason that the next generation has been my passion is because of where I grew up. I grew up in Houston. I always say southeast of the Astrodome. If you want to get technical, South Park, the hood, right? And what I noticed was that I had those role models around me that were guiding me to a different level than the peers that were in my circle, because some of the peers that were in my circle got caught up in the things that most urban youth get caught up in. Got caught up in drugs, got caught up in robbery, got caught up in stealing, got caught up in just drugs. The things that are stereotypical became their norm. And so when I had the opportunity to start speaking, I would always go and ask this one question. So what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I always heard the same two answers. First answer, I want to be a musician. Translation, I want to be a rapper. Okay. I want to go to the league. Translation, I want to make it to the NFL or the NBA, because those are the guys that I see with all the money, with the nice houses, with the nice cars, with all these beautiful women surrounding them. So that's what I want to be. And I started to think about it. And what I realized is that what you're exposed to, what you are exposed to, is what you eventually want to become. And so we went back, started a youth program. My first successful business was the Claim Your Destiny Youth Leadership Program, based on my first book, Claim Your Destiny. Small plug. Go get the book if you haven't already, right? And in this program, we started teaching these young men. We started with young men, and eventually it went to young men and young ladies about becoming better leaders of themselves. The reason that we wanted them to become better leaders of themselves is because these were the young kids in schools that the principal, the teachers were saying, you know what, they're always getting suspended. They're always in ISS. We just don't know what to do with them. I say, give them to me. Because what I realized is that their level of exposure was tainting their view of reality. If the only thing that you see when you turn on the TV is, oh, this person has millions of dollars. What are they doing? Oh, they are a basketball player. They're a football player. Nothing against any professional athletes, any college athletes, any high school athletes. If that's your ambition, go after it. But what these kids were seeing is, well, if I just play a little bit of basketball, if I play for an hour a day, then I'm going to be as good as the kid who is in the top 10% of the basketball field at my age. And it wasn't that was the case. So what we started doing was we started bringing in some of those people that they were interested in meeting. We started bringing them professional athletes. We started bringing them Hall of Fame athletes. We started bringing in college professors, lawyers, doctors, people that were doing major things in the city, presidents of universities in the city, people that were in vice president roles within higher levels of education. And so what these kids started doing was, wow, I can be that too, because they started to realize this person came from the same environment that I'm coming from. They came from the same places that I am, but their aspirations were much different. For the kids that were always sitting there playing video games, I said, you know what? I said, have you ever thought about being a gamer? And I brought a good friend of mine to talk to some of the young men at Gus Garcia Young Men's Leadership Academy. Shout out to them in Austin. They're doing an amazing job. And he walked them through the different things, the different video games that he was a part of. He walked him through what it took to get to his level. He said, when I was your age, my parents told me that playing video games is not going to get me anywhere as well. But when they started seeing, what they started doing was their grades started improving. Their focus started improving. They started setting goals for themselves that were now realistic, not just based on where they were, but where they wanted to go. Their career aspirations began to change because instead of just being the athlete, they started looking at becoming coaches. They started looking at becoming owners. They started looking at becoming a college professor, becoming a teacher, becoming an educator. Now, I bring that to you to say, these kids and the young people that are coming behind us, they aren't lost. They need more exposure to a different reality, a different version of reality. Next thing, and I'm gonna get a little bit biblical on y'all. Proverbs 22:6 says, train a child in the way that he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. And that's what that exposure is. But it also says, and this is why I ask everybody on here, who's your mentor? Who's the person that you go to when you're trying to go to the next level? It says in Proverbs 11:14, said, where there is no guidance, the people fall. But in abundance of counselors, there is victory. 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 Because you have something that you're looking up to. I'm gonna give you one last story before I move on. And this is the story that I'm most proud of. Coach Love said, my biggest accomplishment is my heart for people. Yeah, that's one of them. But the biggest accomplishment to me is what happened in 2015. 2015, I released my first book, Claim Your Destiny. And when I opened my box of books, there was a young man sitting across from me. He was 7 years old. And he looked at me with this look of pride and admiration in his eyes. And he said, Dad, he said, when I get older, I want to be an author and a speaker too. 2017, we published his first book, Zayden's Awesome Adventures. 2018, we took him on his first book signing tour. 2019, he had his first paid speaking engagement. Again, train a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I always look at it as, what is your legacy? If you want to become a positive man, an example of positive masculinity, then do this. One, think about the traits that you want to see in the next generation. Think about the traits that you've seen in so many men that you admire. Exemplify those, because whether you realize it or not, they're always watching. There's always someone watching. There's always someone watching to say, see, that's what I told you. Masculinity is bad. No, it's not. There's a such thing as toxic masculinity, and there's a beautiful thing called positive masculinity. Positive masculinity goes into, are you giving back to your community? Are you setting an example for the next generation? Are you there for your children? Are you there for your family? Are you providing wealth for the next generation? These are all things that I would say are examples of positive masculinity. And if you're not seeing it in your community, then what I would say to you is create that program. Create a youth program where you can go back and you can teach these young leaders. They're not lost. They're young leaders who just need better guidance, better direction. And last but not least, always keep in mind that your legacy will live on long after you do. So we all have that obligation to leave the world a better place than it actually was when we got here. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I really love hearing you speak, because every time you speak, I'm just like, just listening. I'm writing down questions, and you're like answering all the dang questions that I've written down to ask you. However, there is one question that I would like to ask you, and that is, how do you, oh my goodness, how do you even ask that question? Why do you believe that men and boys fear intellectual pursuits and careers, and why they refuse to accept their own intellectual and personal brilliance?
That's a great question. And it's one that I struggled with for the beginning years of my life. I've been 6'7" since I was 14. And so I got put into this box of, oh, you should be an athlete, you should be a football player, you should be a basketball player. When the actuality was, I made straight A's from elementary all the way through high school. I started messing up afterwards because I was trying to prove this bravado and this masculinity, that if you look at it, the people who are really successful are the ones who tap into their most powerful tool, which is the mind. And a lot of times, if you grow up in the hood and you're smart, guess what? You're gonna get bullied. You're gonna get called a nerd. And so I think that's why men and boys are afraid to tap into their intellectualism. But when we get older, we learn words like sapiosexual, which means that someone is attracted to your intelligence. But when we're younger, the only things that we see are, again, the people who get the most attention, the most love in the playgrounds, in the lunchroom, are the bigger, the more bravado, the somewhat bullies of our generations. And it's not until we get older then we start accepting the gifts that we have, that we become the people that we can actually be.
Absolutely. It seems like we conflate strength, physical strength, with ability, and I think that's an unfortunate conflation, because there's a lot of really brilliant boys and men out there that really should be promoted.
That is an excellent point. What I heard you say, Sugar Ray, is that you were smart your whole life. You didn't get to be 6'7" until you were a teenager, but people looked right over your intelligence and decided that you needed to be an athlete. That really hits me in the gut. I must tell you. I must tell you. You're going to share more about that with us in conversation when we have open chat. There's a couple of questions out there for you. So, family, if you have a question, it'll be very helpful for me if you put a Q in front of that. That way, when I look back and we are having the open chat, I can make sure that I'm putting your questions up and they get discussed. But in this moment, I want to let you know that we have a very tender subject that we are going to discuss. The fact is, male rape is real, and it has been real since the beginning of time. It wasn't into recent, modern times, actually, in the last few years, that it became acknowledged as a crime by the federal government. So if you are sensitive about subject matter, just please be advised that now would be a good time to take a quick break, because Gregory is going to share his personal story, but really also how he was able to find success and become healed. Gregory?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you, Coach Love. My name is Dr. Gregory Williams. I work at Baylor College of Medicine in beautiful Houston, Texas. Matter of fact, my office is just right across the way there. You can see it right there about on the 10th floor. And I wrote a book just a few years ago, just almost 3 years ago now, called Shattered by the Darkness, Putting the Pieces Back Together After Child Abuse. Putting the pieces back together. I was sexually abused by my father and his friends from my earliest memory as a child, every day. There's not a day in my childhood that I don't remember being sexually abused. From 4 years old all the way up to just about my 17th birthday. I was gang raped. First time in my life. When I was 12 years old, I had just turned 12. A couple times that summer, a couple times the following summer. And then from just about 12 and a half to 13 years old, every Monday evening, my dad would sell me in my own bedroom every Monday evening from about 5:30 till 10:30. And literally my door would become a revolving door of my bedroom. Men and women, one or two at a time, would come in, do what they wanted to do with me, pay dad. They would tip me in a little tip jar and leave. And then the next one would come in shortly after, all night long, for 2.5, 3 years. Putting the pieces back together, it was like me taking this champagne glass, slamming it on concrete, and then getting some combat boots and just stomping those pieces into little bitty chips and dust. And then the world giving you some duct tape and say, there, put it all back together and see what kind of life you're going to have. Putting the pieces back together. As a man, the way I put those pieces back together was simple. I was silent for over 35 years, showing absolutely, as a man, no pain, no tears, no anger, no rage, no fear coming out. It was all held in because I kept burying it and pushing it down, and no reaching out for help, and no reality, no genuineness, no healing. Putting the pieces back together? No, just hiding, pretending. And men, I was guilty of this, and I think probably everybody on our panel has in their one part of their lives. We would mask it over and pretend to be somebody that we weren't, so you couldn't find out who the real person was behind the mask. And involving in that was lying, manipulating, pretending to be somebody I wasn't. All during that time, I was questioning my real manhood. I was questioning every relationship I ever had. I was even questioning my ability and my functioning of being a real father, even a good father or not. Putting the pieces back together. Listen to this, and it's okay to lean into your computer right now because you need to hear this. Until I admitted what had happened to me, said it, faced it, and started unpacking all of the baggage that I had in my emotional trunk for over 35 years, hurt after hurt, abuse after abuse, rape after rape. Then the weight started lifting off. I started unpacking the trunk, taking out some baggage that was old, rusty, dirty, that I thought was put away for years. But man, was it oh so heavy. And when I started unloading the trunk, I started feeling that weight lifted off of me. And after it was empty, somewhat empty, I think there's still probably a bag or two in there, that I start understanding and recognizing a seed of hope that was planted in my heart and in my life. I started to find purpose and realizing that the shame and the guilt that I self-inflicted and literally put inside of me every day, it wasn't my fault. It didn't deserve to be on me. And I started finding a reason for even existing, for being a man. And I found that when I started being true to myself, putting the pieces back together again, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. And let me be honest with you, some days, literally 1 minute at a time. You can start putting the pieces back together of your life, no matter what has happened to you. And it can begin today. Rape for a man is real. That was my past. But it's not who I am, and it's not my future. I will take that stuff from the past, I will remold it, I will deal with it, and now I try to help people around the world. I've turned the negative into a positive. I've turned the rape into something that I can use as a tool to show people the way to hope. Face it, name it, start unpacking that heavy baggage, and finally realize that hope can be found inside of you. Real hope, real healing. And it can begin today. Let me tell you, I promise it's there for you. Thank you.
Dr. Gregory Williams, my heart just really melts and reaches out to you and hugs you. I thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story with us. On the screen now, I have a picture, and it is of your previous book, Shattered by the Darkness. But then on the other side, there is hiding in the darkness. All together, though, there is a picture of you smiling, and that's Mr. Baylor College of Medicine. And then there's another picture that is behind that. You've told me before about your process of just kind of being Mr. Great Guy, but having this emotional pain that is inside of you. It's not a one-hit wonder, is it? It's something that you must do over and over again, every time.
Absolutely. And I played the game. I mean, up to almost a few years ago, not one person in my life knew anything about this. I kept it secret till 3 years ago. I told my children, I have 3 boys. Literally, I sent them a chapter at a time as I would write it in the Shattered by the Darkness book, and I would email it to them. And that's how I told them. And because of that, because of me admitting it and facing it and understanding it wasn't my fault, my children and I, my boys and I, have a better relationship than we ever had in all of our lives. And they're in their 30s. And I missed so many years of being that man that isn't smiling and kind of hiding in the darkness in the back instead of being who I really am.
You shared that what really happened to you is that your relationships is what really suffered, because you were able to connect sexually, but you suffered in your relationships. In just a moment, we are bringing up Jared Pennington. He is, well, you know what? I'm going to tell you, he's very physically fit, but that is not the most awesome thing about him. He's become a TikTok sensation because he gives excellent relationship advice while he remains fit. You can't really be surprised that he's such a fit guy because of his background in the Air Force. So without further ado, welcome, Jared.
Hello, hello. How are you?
How are you? How are you? We are ready to receive your heart and your advice. We are sitting at your feet.
Awesome, awesome. So before I get started, before I introduce myself, I'd like to ask a question. I'd like to know who here, I can't see my audience, but who here has been through something that has hurt them? Without seeing anybody, honestly, everyone who is watching the program should have raised your hand or agreed or whatever. If you haven't been through something, you're lying. So my name is Jared Pennington. Like Coach Love said, I'm active duty military. I'm a physical trainer. I'm a TikTok influencer. A few things about me. Ever since joining the military, I've started my own physical training business. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I've been through a pretty rocky divorce and custody battle with the mother of my child. Like a few members who have spoken to you already, I grew up in a worse part of town. I grew up in the hood, you know, not bars on windows, but like plywood on windows of my neighbors' homes. I had a pretty rocky relationship with my mother. You know, we grew up on like welfare, Section 8. We've been homeless. We've had homes burned down. I've been in just about every type of unhealthy relationship you can think of. I've seen abuse. I've seen suicide. I've battled with alcoholism. I've helped others, and I've battled myself with depression. I've also seen my fair share of certain abuses in my childhood. You may be wondering where my father was, you know, during all this. He's also a retired military member. My father was present in my life but he also lives on the other side of the planet. He has since I was like 2 years old. As a father, right, you can only be so available as a parent from living on the other side of the world from your child. Due to my parents' dynamic, I lived in almost everywhere you can think of. I changed locations probably every single school year. I was never able to make truly valuable connections with people because growing up, I always had to meet and leave constantly, over and over and over. Because of that, I developed this very strong ability of creating friendships and understanding other people because very quickly as a child, you learn how to do that in order to make good connections. The reason I'm telling everybody these things is one, I want to establish how a lot of us can relate. Um, because how many people heard the things I said, and honestly, if I was in the crowd, I would go, "Wow, me too," or "That's tough. This guy is strong. I know how he feels. This is great." Now think about that, because the things that make me look strong, the things that make me look powerful as a man, are also my greatest weaknesses. All of these things are things that affect me in all of my relationships. And all of these things affect my friendships. All of these things affect how I handle life and my family. As a man, we're not programmed to see our weaknesses, only to acknowledge and build our strengths. One day, I was having a conversation with a partner of mine, and we were going through a pretty rough time, right? But we really got into our pasts and our lives. And she asked me, "Is your relationship with your mother the reason you treat me the way you do?" And that hit different. Honestly, that hit different because I never thought about it that way, right? I'm thinking, wow, I'm 27 years old and somebody just had a 10-minute conversation with me. And they just told me something that's been sitting in my face my entire life. I thought about it, and I wanted to have this conversation with my mother. It took a while, right? I had to build up that confidence. As a man, that's my mother. I want to take care of my mother, right? I don't want to hurt her feelings, and a conversation like that will hurt my mother's feelings. But, I knew I needed that conversation, and I knew I needed that to heal and to grow and be the man and the father that I am trying to be as I grow. The reason I bring this up to everybody is because think about how hard it is for you to identify a habit you formed 15 years ago. How hard do you think it was for me to realize how my relationship with my mother had affected every woman I'd ever been with? Or how it took me my entire life to realize that I attached to people super quickly in my past. But I didn't realize that because as a child, I moved all the time. I was always meeting new people. I had built that habit. Over 18 years of changing schools and changing friends and da da da, I had built a habit of as soon as I meet someone I connect with, bam, bond. I'm going to make that connection. It took me 20 years to realize how both of my parents being more or less absent may have affected me. And it's not just my relationship with my parents, it's everything I've built over time. Everything in my past has in some way affected how I am connecting with other people. And as a man, I'm not diving into myself to find out what those issues are. I'm growing as a man, and I'm just like, I need to win, 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 win. That's all I need to do. So I'm only focusing on things that are powerful and strong about me, but I'm not diving into the things that are going to make me a better person. Our loved ones don't deserve our trauma. It takes a very painful level of self evaluation to see your faults as a man. It really takes humbling yourself to sit down and dive into those things. I had to go through probably one of the worst times in my life. You know, I was pretty much at the point where everything was about to fall apart before I sat down and asked myself, what am I doing that is putting me in these situations? That's when I decided to go to therapy, because I realized, instead of blaming everyone else and instead of, you know, trying to direct my anger and everything at what's going on outside of me, somehow a decision I made got me here. And I'm not looking into those habits I formed 15 years ago as maybe being, you know, the root of those problems. As men, our true definition of strength should be facing our demons head on in order to better protect and provide the people that are around us and the people that we love. It is so very important as a man to turn everything we have, you know, your emotions, your problems, your troubles, whatever is going on. As men, we have to take everything and flip it into a positive. But most men are only taking those negative things outside of themselves and trying to flip it. Very few men are actually looking at, what about this demon sitting on my shoulder right here? Why can't I flip this into a positive? Men tend to grow up and learn this dynamic where we have to win. At the end of the day, most men define themselves and their self-worth off their ability to win. If you're not winning, you're not a man. Or if you're not trying to win, at least. It was only when I decided, you know, okay, let me look into everything that I have into my past. Let me actually just shut up and think about what's going on with me mentally, that things started to change in my life. When I finally started self-evaluating and going to therapy and talking to other people, everything changed. My love life, my relationship with my girl, my relationship with my daughter, my family, my career, everything. From one simple thought, what can I fix about me? That one thought turned everything else 180. It makes a huge difference. And ever since I changed my approach, everything around me has been great. Throughout my life, I've learned as a man, I'm not doing my job if I'm not making that self-evaluation, right? Taking care of my mental space. You can't give someone else a home if you're still lost. But I want to be a provider. In conclusion, I want to thank Coach Love and the Epic Group for this opportunity. Hopefully I was able to reach someone and continue the truly amazing movement. I love seeing men talk about things like this. It's extremely healthy. Remember, communication is key. And if it makes you uncomfortable, do it.
I'm going to call you Mr. Mic Drop. That's going to be your new name, because you had a lot of mic drop moments in what you said. It is it's not amazing, but it's important to acknowledge how what you shared and what Dr. Williams shared and what Sugar Ray shared actually all melts together. I am very much looking forward to your conversation that you guys are about to have as a team and a conglomerate. So without further ado, here we go. Steve is on mute, so he has to unmute himself.
I need to get into the habit of fixing that when we go on. But, you know, I got to take a moment here and just kind of, you know, because I'm listening to you guys talk and I'm absolutely mystified by Dr. Williams and what his story is. And even though I can't relate to the story itself, I can relate to the strongest aspects of that story, like overcoming past traumas. And then, you know, Jared comes in with, you know, that truth bomb of, you know, our loved ones don't deserve our trauma, right? And, you know, as I'm taking notes, I'm seeing how all these things connect. And you know, like I asked Sugar Ray, is like, you know, why is it that boys and men don't honor and respect their intelligence and their ability? And then we get to Dr. Williams, and then we go to Jared, and we're seeing this line of reasoning where at many points in time in our lives, we are taught not how to love and respect and honor our ability and our intelligence. And I got really teary-eyed when Jared was talking, because as he's speaking, I'm hearing these things that I'm like, I felt that. I experienced that. I went through that. I lived that. I saw the results and the benefits of getting the mental health care that I deserve. Right. And so I had a hard time collecting myself enough to even speak as soon as we got into this room. So I'll make this brief. Is one thing that I wanted to talk to Dr. Williams about was I've spoken to to Coach Love about masks and how we wear them, and the masks that we wear, and Dr. Bradford talked about this too, Dr. Bradford White. I wear a different mask for everybody that is in my life. I wear a different mask for my children, for my wife, for my coworkers. The problem is when we wear a mask for ourselves, against ourselves. Not allowing us to see who we are underneath that mask is something that I feel like a lot of men do. And that's why I'm glad that Jared brought up self-introspection, self-evaluation. And I can't help but feel like this overriding conversation needs to be around how men view themselves. Why do we view ourselves the way that we do? I'd like to just open the panel to you guys and see what you guys feel about that question.
Well, I think I started to believe the mask. And that's what is so damaging to when we start covering things up. We start pretending we are the people that we are pretending to be, and we start believing it. And I didn't, you know, I totally love the question about intellectual, because, you know, I put myself in the music. You know, this is what saved me from so many times of wanting to jump off the balcony, is I sit here and start playing, and it would help me soothe everything down, you know, and calm down. But when I look in the mirror, I still see things that's really ugly in me. And it's so much easier just to put the mask on. It's tough to rip it off and go, here, world. But the tough part of it was always self-inflicting. I was always afraid that everybody that I would walk into and meet after I exposed this in this book, nobody would love me anymore. Nobody would accept me. Nobody would welcome me. I would always be somebody, oh, that's the guy that was abused every day of his life. But then when I finally put the guard down, I found out that, hey, this world does have people that love you, and they love you for who you are. And that was powerful for me, way powerful.
Absolutely. Jared or Sugar Ray, did you want to add to that? Because I've got one more question after this.
I'd completely agree that everybody has to put that mask on. I don't know about you guys. I'm sure there are people that are watching that have experience with military lifestyle. That's a perfect example of it, right? Like no matter what's going on in my life, no matter how I feel, no matter what problems I have, right? When duty calls, that's it. Put the mask on. Yep, and let's go. And it's service before self, which I signed up for. I'm not complaining about, right? But that's so comparable to anything. Men put that mask on to go to work. Men put that mask on to go to church. Men put that mask on when they go to the grocery store. Men put that mask on when they're sitting on the couch and having a conversation with their grandmother. You know, it's so common that it's not even a conscious choice. You know what I mean? It's instinct.
Do you think the problem is that when personally, this is what I think, the problem becomes when we continue to wear the mask when we shouldn't be. When we're having intimate moments and conversations with our loved ones, with our wives, with our girls, with our children. But I wanted to hear what Sugar Ray's opinion was on the previous question.
Yeah, I think that we all wear a mask to a certain degree, and I'll say, just like Doc, when you released your book, and Jared, what you were saying, it wasn't until I personally started. I go back. It was probably about 2-3 years ago, and I was talking to a young lady, and she said, "You're so powerful. Why are you not at the level that you want to be?" And she said, and she was listening, and she was like, "You haven't healed that little boy yet. Until you heal that little boy, and until you release him, you're not going to be the man that you can be." And that's when, even though I still wear suits, if you listen to anything that I do, I got a hood vernacular, and I can be myself. I can be myself because I don't care what people think about me anymore. I don't care, and I think a lot of times we do wear that mask because we are around those people that haven't fully accepted us or haven't shown us that they'll accept us regardless of what we share with them. And that's a dangerous place to be. If you continue to surround yourself with those type of people, you'll always wear this mask that doesn't fit you or your goals, or doesn't allow you to become the powerful man or woman that you can be. But as soon as it's harming you more than it's helping you. And just like Jared said, I was over here like, wait a minute. Yeah, our loved ones don't deserve our trauma, because as long as we walk around with that mask on, it's like, no, I'm good. You're not. Until you get that healing, even if you don't feel like going and talking to a mental health counselor, you don't feel like going to talk to a pastor, or, talk to God. Spend some time getting to learn yourself, because when you begin to learn yourself, that's when you can truly love yourself and bring others in who really love you, because now you're exposing the real you as opposed to this person that you think that they want to see. So I'll say we all wear the mask, but it's time for everybody to start dropping that mask or change your circle. And if they don't like it, guess what? I learned this when I was 21 years old. I didn't know you for 21 years before. There's going to be another 21 years that we probably won't have another phone call. I'll be good either way it goes.
I know you know that Bernie Mac quote about people not liking his son.
Yeah. I wrote, I got a new book coming out in a couple of weeks, and the title of the second chapter goes like this: I'm fine and neither are you. And that's exactly what we do. And the world has taught us that. Hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm fine. And we just keep right on going. It is a red flag. You're not fine. There's an issue. But as men especially, we're supposed to be fine, because we have that stereotype. We're supposed to fix things. So how can we be broken when it's our job to fix things?
Yes.
That brings me to something that I've discussed a couple of times on here. Briefly, I want to touch on this point. The problem with masks is when we wear them, it obscures our view of everything else, and that includes our family. So if we're keeping the mask on too much, it obscures the view that we have of our family's needs and of our personal needs. Speaking to what you were talking to, sorry.
Also, keep the people that really love you, genuinely love you, away from you, because they don't love you for who you really are. They love you for who they think you are. So after you take the mask off, then true, genuine, authentic love can be revealed. If you don't love me for who I am now, see ya.
Yeah.
If you do, I want to keep you.
And this is what I wanted to get to, was as we're discussing all of this, and this is something that I've discussed with Coach many, many times. What I've found is that a lot of men, many, many men, feel like we are the emotional anchors of our family. If we lose our shit, excuse my language, I apologize. If we lose ourselves, if we lose control of ourselves, what's going to happen with our family? Because everybody in our family comes to us for that emotional support, that anchor of emotional support. Our children need to know that we've got our stuff together so that we can move throughout the world with confidence. They need that confidence. They live through our confidence. Same with our spouses, whether it's male or female, because gay men are not excluded from this conversation. Okay. So when we have our spouses, our significant others, our wives or our husbands, they also look to us for that emotional support. And when we are the constant anchor of the emotional support of the family, what happens to an anchor when it's underwater? It's drowning. It's constantly there. It never gets above water. And that's something that I feel that men suffer with the suffocation of the depth of that responsibility. And I want to help men bring themselves up out of that so that we can have that conversation a little bit more frequently.
Amen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I see a few questions in there. One about journaling and
just a few.
About the good masculinity. And honestly, I don't really journal as much, but I do understand the importance of it. And then that pressure for good masculinity to the younger men, just allowing them to learn to accept themselves for who they are. My mentor says it this way. He says, if you grow up in the hood and all you see is basketball players, football players, you think that that's the only thing that you can do. But what happens if you go to a different environment and you find out you're really good at tennis? You find out you're really good at bow hunting. You find out you're really good at rowing. It's about exposure, and it goes into that mask, like we keep saying. Get rid of those people. Well, show people who you really are and allow them to make a decision for themselves. Because if you don't, you'll always walk around feeling like there's something less than about you. And that's a dangerous place to be.
You can never feel like yourself, like who you are. Sorry. Go ahead, Jared.
I'd like to touch on that journaling question, right? I used to be at a point where I was trying to also figure out, is journaling going to help me? My mother was like that. Writing kind of helps her. But also, man, woman, or whoever you are, right? Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be journaling. I tried journaling and it didn't work. I tried a couple things and it didn't work, right? I learned my true outlet is talking to other people. Your journaling can be anything. And I just so happen to have formed a very good circle that I can constantly talk to. And I vent to them just about every day, anytime I have a bad day. So just be aware of who you are as a person, right? And if one thing doesn't work for you, keep trying until you find that thing.
Yeah, that's great wisdom. Journaling saved me. I journal every day. I bleed on the page every day since I could write. I've always journaled. And I think that's a great point. Talking to people, but just don't hold it in. You got to let it out, because when you put those demons in the basement of your life, you think they're hidden, but they're down in the basement lifting weights, baby, and they're getting ready to come back up, and they will revisit you, and it won't be pretty. You got to
flip the house over if you let.
Well, I mean, Nietzsche wrote a whole book about that. It's called The Will to Power. Like recognizing where your power is. What is power? Well, power by its definition is the manifestation of the spirit, right? So we have to manifest our spirit in the world, and we do that through our will. And something that journaling helps do. I used to journal, but now I do. Like I said earlier, I'm an author. I do podcasts. I'm the host of the Shades Free Intellectual, where I discuss a lot of these different topics as well. So my journaling is now out there permanently. But the importance of journaling too is so that you can look back and you can relearn the lessons that you forgot that you learned, right? It's a way to go back and revisit your journey, which is why it's called a journal, and to even possibly when your son is or your daughters are going through issues, you can go back and you can be like, I remember this. I remember when it was, and you can go back and you can start reading through your journal and you can be like, oh yeah. And then you actually end up learning more than you did the last time, because now you have wisdom and experience that you can benefit while reading those. So I love the question of journaling in this conversation. Absolutely wonderful. Do we need to move on, Coach?
Can I throw a question out there to the people in the audience?
Absolutely.
What y'all have seen from this conference, these panel of men, and there's way more exciting men to come. Would y'all be interested in hearing this in book form, seeing this in book form? Because I think as we have talked, we've learned so much from each other. And I think it would be amazing to have the men on the panel to participate in a book together, because there's so many perspectives and so many views.
I'm not going to steal your thunder. I think that's a great idea, and I want to do that, and I want to be a part of that. I was thinking as you were saying that, it would be like, that would be so cool if we could get everybody together and have every single guy just write a chapter.
Yeah.
Like, that makes my heart sing, man, thinking about that.
I can make that.
Coach?
I'm going to call this the mic drop crew. That's what this is. This was full of mic drop moments constantly. You guys are fantastic. We are rounding out our second hour, and I'm just going to say, stay tuned. We'll be right back after this brief break.
Check. If I let heartbreak define the man I am, there wouldn't be much left to outline where I stand. They got me real confused about the way we doing things, cause deep pain is the only love we can maintain. See, I'm saying it's about time and overdue. We start looking at the world surrounding us with different views. Maybe pick and choose a little less loosely. This generation still picking views based on a loose leaf. So I write my bars between the lines for my enjoyment. Keep my voice on, the faith strong, holy anointment. Look past what we appointed as the general in charge. Generally hard, but this generation is subpar. For my standards, I won't ever stake a claim to fame, cause trash artists that y'all play ain't in my lane. It's not my brain, I'm out the frame, outside the focus in the game, admitting that without a shame. Cause I don't plan to be the same, I just do what I do, and I feel like I do it grand. If you disagree, come visit me, would love to shake your hand, destroy you as a man with words you couldn't comprehend. Knife back syllables, cut you up until your end. I value hard work and knowledge. You claim the good looks and garbage, claiming some superstardom, battling with the boredom of being classified as another rapper type. Don't match the hype you would like, but one go blow up every night.
In terms of our perceptions, we are all alone in our mind.
All of these things fall under the general category of reality shifts.
And if there were ever any doubts about the word's rising popularity, it's real.
Yeah, so tell me what is real. Reload the Glock, is it real? Whip up the rock, is it real? She gave me top, is it real? Yeah, so tell me what is real. I hit a lick, is it real? Pants at the strip, is it real? Hand on the grip, is it real? Yeah, so tell me what is real. I load the Glock, is it real? Whip up the rock, is it real? She gave me top, is it real? Yeah, so tell me what is real. We hit a lick, is it real? Pants at the strip, is it real? Hands on the grip, is it real? Or am I wrong for my composure? Pardon me, but can't you see this life ain't bring disclosures? How the hell can I approach this? Wrapped up without a label, promise has been enabled. Therefore, I am unable to tell you that I am able to obtain a few who pray to lose, while the prey is loose. Stuck in the loop, the gander hates what's good for the goose. Another noose, disguised as chains and golden options. You rock designer, they still got you picking cotton.
Why is this word used so frequently?
Seriously, it's a pretty easy question. You should be able to answer it.
Well, it is a word that evokes many emotions in people. It's a derogatory remark that has divided people for many years.
Yeah, so tell me what is real. Reload the Glock, is it real? Whip up the rock, is it real? She gave me top, is it real? Yeah, so tell me what is real. I hit a lick, is it real? Been at the strip, is it real? Hand on the grip, is it real?
I just don't understand it. And I'm trying to understand it.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if all men count with you, if neither foes nor loving friends count on you, but none too much, if you can feel the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
Thank you so much, family, for hanging out with us. As you can see, it was mic drop after mic drop after mic drop in our second hour, and our third hour will be more of the same. I cannot really say enough about this statement. It says that I never wanted to be like my dad. Imagine having that in you, because it could go a lot of ways. Well, here to tell us what he meant by that statement is Tony Jeffries. Hello, Tony. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking.
That's a pretty powerful statement, sir.
Yes, it is. And it is a loaded statement as well. You know, when I was a kid, I remember having conversations with my mother, and she would tell me, boy, you're so much like your dad. That's why you guys don't get along. I didn't grow up in a household that was traumatic. I grew up in a beautiful home. I had both my mom and dad in the place, and they were very much engaged in the lives of my sister and myself when we were kids. And they even showed me something very special as we got to be older, and they adopted my two brothers who are younger than I am. And so I got a chance to see just beautiful Black love every day. But I resisted the notion of being like my dad. See, my mother shared with me when I was a kid that we were living in Germany. My dad was in the army early on. He just served a quick tour, and then he went on ahead and got out of the military and did life. But while we were stationed, he was stationed in Germany, and we were there, my mother shared a story with me that, you know, she was a little slow getting out of bed that morning. And when she woke up, she saw this long trail of cereal with milk trailed in behind it, all the way up to a bowl with me at about 2 years old with a spoon and bowl and milk and cereal and just eating away just like life is normal. It showed just this strong will that I had when I was a child. And I just remember I was never the kid that if you told me don't do something, I was never just comfortable with not doing it because you told me not to do it. I needed to find out why I couldn't do it. If you told me don't touch that electric socket, guess what? You might as well cover that electric socket up because I'm going to touch it and find out why I can't touch it. I was just a strong-willed child. And so early on, I just began to build this resistance to not wanting to be like my dad. And it was no fault of his at all. My dad and mom, they had me young. My mother was 17 when I was born, and my dad was 18, about to be 19. And the day after my mother turned 18, my dad and mom got married. So for every year, I was born in June of 71, and my parents were married in December of 71, December 12th to be exact. It was 1971. My mother's birthday was December 11th. And so when they got married, they stayed together and they showed me what love looked like. But I kept wanting to find out things differently. And I resisted being the person that I saw in my father. Why? I don't know. I just know that there was so much in my own little mind that was beginning to circulate and trying to figure out who I was. And then it compounded as I began to get in school. I remember being in the first or second grade. I had a friend named Landon. That was my partner. That was my boy. And he was fair complected. And all of the girls just loved Landon because he was light skinned with curly hair. Well, my mother was fair complected, but my dad was dark complected. And so they brought out this brown skinned kid who just, I was marginal with the girls when I was a kid, but I wanted more attention. And so what I thought in my little warped little young mind that it's my daddy's fault that I don't get the girls to say that I'm cute. Ain't that something? And so early on, I began resisting my dad. And then when I got to be about 12 years old, something really transitioned. My father surrendered his heart to the Lordship of Jesus Christ. And I couldn't understand that. I said, wait a minute, man. Why do we have to go to church every Sunday? That doesn't make sense to me. I want to go to Forest Park. That's a park in St. Louis, if many of y'all probably don't know. But it's a park that everybody got a chance to go hang out at on Sunday afternoons. But we were stuck in church. I don't want to be at church every Sunday. You got to be kidding me. And then my father began to start smiling at people and saying hi and being just a great guy. And I was like, no, I don't want that. I want to run the streets. I want to do everything that I see everybody else doing. And I began to resist that. So I didn't resist. I didn't have the mantra of I didn't want to be like my dad because my dad was toxic. It was quite the opposite. I was seeking after toxicity. Why? Well, I guess it was my own brokenness as a kid. Not that my dad contributed to that brokenness. I think it's more or less that, we all find this space where we're trying to find out who we are. And in my mind's eye, I thought that I could do some things opposite of my dad and prove to him that I don't need to be like you as I grow up. And it led me into one poor decision after another, even into my adulthood. And I couldn't understand how things got to this space where I was just constantly resisting the wonderful influence that my dad had over my life. He had friends that would come to him for advice. He was a deacon at his church. People loved my dad, but I did not want to be like that. I wanted to be something completely different. And so, I think the cat's out of the bag. I think you can see my title there is Pastor Tony Jeffrey. And so things have changed. My life has completely changed. And now my dad and I have this wonderful relationship. In fact, come Father's Day, I always like to just talk to him and I call him Pop. Hey, Pop, how you doing, man? And even when we are in our home, now I'm relocated to Omaha, Nebraska, but St. Louis is my home. And when I was in St. Louis, I would just find little projects around the house to ask my dad to come and help me with, just so I could be in his presence, because he's just a wonderful man. But something had changed in my life before I was able to embrace the fact that I am very much like my father. In fact, I'm so much like my dad that I could have strangers walk up to me out of the blue and say that know my dad personally, whether they work with him or not, but they will walk up to me and they would ask me, hey man, is Jimmy Jeffrey your dad? They wouldn't know me from Adam. but my mannerisms are like his. I speak like his. My cadence in my talk is very much like my dad. And I had to, once I learned to embrace that my dad is a part of me, then I was able to embrace my manhood, who I am as a man. And I was so resistant to everything that my dad was showing me that I never caught some things that he was actually teaching me and how he carried himself as a man. I'll give you 3 thoughts that I have considered when I look back at manhood and when I look back at who my dad was showing me or how my dad was modeling manhood before me. One of the thoughts is honesty. My dad was a very honest man. He was very trustworthy. But not only was he just trustworthy, but he was honest with his own emotions. I remember him telling me that, hey man, I'm doing the best that I can. There's no book on being a dad, but I'm here and I love you, and I'm not going to give up on you. And as much as I did not want to do the things that my dad was doing, I was pushing against him, and he was just very open and honest with his emotions about me. And when I look back at it as a 50-year-old man now, I recognize that there needed to be some emotional IQ there for myself. I've got to be able to understand my own emotions and to be able to embrace those emotions and to recognize that in order for there to be genuine growth in my own life, I can't resist the fact that I am who I am, not in part because of my dad, but because this is how God has made me to be. And now my dad is that living example of what real manhood is. He also showed me consistency. I'll never forget. I was about 20, 21 years old and things, and I needed to go to the doctor. And we weren't, back then, we didn't know much about, my parents didn't know a whole lot about the insurance my dad carried. And so I tried to talk my dad into, I said, Dad, listen, everybody says we look alike. Just give me your license. I'll go to the doctor's office and I will, just tell them I'm you. And my dad looked at me with the craziest look on his face. He said, son, what is wrong with you? You can't keep trying to get over on everybody, man. That's not how life works. No, I'm not giving you my ID. And no, you're not going to the doctor and telling them that you're me. You just go to the doctor and whatever it costs to pay for it, then we'll just pay for it. But don't keep trying to get over on people. My dad was a consistent man. He never compromised on his moral compass. He showed me that. My dad was brave. One of the greatest gifts my dad gave me was his love for my mother. I watched him be faithful to their relationship. Even to the day that my mom passed away, I watched my dad love my mother through sickness. And it gave me an example of what it means to be a man, a husband, and a father to my beautiful daughters. And so when I look back and I consider life as I've gotten to this stage, I recognize that honesty, consistency, and bravery were things that my dad anchored in my heart. And it helps me to be the man that I am today. And so not only do I love my dad, but I embrace very much being like my dad. And so thank you for your time. And I trust that time together, even as we go forward in the rest of this day, will be a blessing to all of you all.
That is incredibly powerful. I love the way you wove that story together. I most like about your father, his integrity. You were trying to run from it, but you could not run from it. And I also like what you said about emotional intelligence. We have with us today a man who his whole mission is emotional intelligence. As a matter of fact, the name of his organization is Managing Emotions Naturally. Hello, Dr. Lay. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me on, Coach.
My pleasure. Now we have the honor of having you manage our private green room for our VIPs.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. That's the plan. I'm very pleased to have you doing that for us. And if you don't mind, really quickly, can you tell us a little bit about your program and how you're helping police officers?
Yes. So different program on that one as far as, but it all ties together. One of the things, it was so interesting listening to the panel of men because I can relate on so many different levels with each of the men. You know, what we mask, how we grow up, the things that we suppress at a very early age that ends up coming out in a behavior that's not approved by society. And so we try to navigate, you know, society and jump into different institutions and careers that will allow us to kind of wear that mask and be okay with it and be justified. Just like Jared, I'm active duty as well, active duty Air Force. But prior to Air Force, I was military Army, excuse me, as a fighter, and now I'm a mental health provider. So, but during that time as a fighter, one of the things I noticed as far as learning to suppress my emotions, having these defense mechanisms that I learned very early on because they were there to protect me. So they were good at that time as a kid, but it stumped my emotional growth. And what happened as I got older and I, you know, experienced life, I went through my ups and downs. My emotional growth was still stuck back in, you know, when I was 7 years old, right? So I'm 30 years old, but using a 7-year-old emotion to handle a 30-year-old problem, it does look reckless. And so growing up and having a very having poor guidance, I guess you would say, on how to respect my emotions but not give them power. I started to see that not only when I was in the Army as a fighter amongst men, but also I saw it as a clinician as well. Even in individuals I had in my sessions and saw it in myself, is that I had really, we struggle with respecting our emotions. And it's because we never were given a platform to express them in a healthy way. Okay. So when I was going through my doctoral program, I wanted to really make an impact on, hey, how do what grand challenge, if you will, wicked problem do I really want to attack? And at this time, of course, the height of Black Lives Matter and all of the different things that were coming with in police excessive use of force and things of that nature. And I said, you know what, I want to get in there. And I wanted to get in there because right around that same time, I was learning about empathy. I was learning how to employ empathy, how to utilize it in my masculinity. And I really wanted to spread that to the police force. And what the other thing I noticed about my journey with that was, and I entitled it Relay, the Relay Project. And Relay stands for respect, empathy, learn, acknowledge, and yield. Right. And it really started for me back when I was in high school. I'm from North New Jersey. I went to high school up there. I was also an athlete who got recruited for track to college and all of these things. But back when I was getting recruited, I was so proud because this coach was recruiting myself as well as recruiting another individual who was in the same city. And he was one of my biggest competitors. So I said, you know what, we're going to get on the relay team and we're going to dominate. Right. Well,
and that is magnificent. We are going to learn more about that program in just a bit. I love how emotional intelligence is necessary to continue to build relationships. And sometimes we do not tend to our relationships as we should. That is what happened to my very next guest. And it actually began to create a security threat in his relationship. So thank goodness he was able to overcome that. Without further ado, how are you, Joseph?
I'm doing well. It's just been a great day, amazing opportunity to be here with the rest of the amazing men here on this panel. Amazing story that has been shared, and I'm just grateful to be here today.
Excellent, excellent. So tell us how not properly managing your relationships became a security threat.
Yes. So first, yes, my name is Dr. Joseph Burt Miller Jr. Um, current, uh, Originally from New York, currently reside in Maryland. Um, and gonna share, I guess, a quick story about my relationship with my brother and how essentially the evolution of our relationship of it went from one level kind of dropped down and came back up, almost like a roller coaster, I'd say. So um but the best way I could describe how it happened is that a card game fixed a silent security threat in a lifelong relationship. So in fall 2018, my family and I we spent time together on Thanksgiving at my parents' house. They were living in New York at the time, but they currently now reside in Connecticut. It was an opportunity for us to relax, reconnect, catch up with loved ones that we may not have spent much time throughout that we would not spend as much time as we would throughout the year. But what we did not learn, or what we did not expect to learn, was the deeper relationships that would cultivate that day. My cousin introduced me to this card game called the And. This card game consists of specific categories such as family, friends, co-workers, self, couples, and more. So each card deck contains unique questions according to its category. Then you and one other participant ask deep and thoughtful questions to one another. So this game, it stirred up memories and great emotions that were unknowingly dormant, waiting to be unlocked by the right question. When it came time for my brother and me to ask each other questions, we learned we did not know each other as well as we thought. See, my brother and I, growing up in New York, were very close. We played video games together, hung out everywhere. We even wore matching basketball jerseys from time to time. But I noticed a change in our relationship when I left for the Air Force after graduating high school. My life moved on as I started my cybersecurity career, my cybersecurity journey. I divorced in 2015. I remarried in 2020. I didn't talk with them about my thoughts, hopes, or heartbreak. Time and life changes replaced the closeness between me and my brother. I had my own family to lead and devote my time and attention to. During this relationship change, negative assumptions began to creep into my head. I thought my brother was upset with me. I wondered if he was angry with me. That honestly made me sad, and because I did I missed the close connection that we had. But unfortunately, we were not at a place where we would talk about our feelings to come to any sort of understanding between each other. I wasn't sure if it was out of fear of asking each other the necessary deep questions, or if we both want to avoid any potential confrontation. Our relationship changed for the better on that Thanksgiving day. This may sound silly, but the card game was a catalyst in removing the menace and unspoken silence between us. The questions we asked each other made us realize we wanted a deeper, more meaningful connection. An action item from that day was that we became intentional about growing our relationship. We set a day and time on the calendar to meet weekly for an hour to discuss everything, any and everything. We continue we continue to do this action to this very day, 3 years running to be exact. It is a safe space to connect and discuss what makes us vulnerable, to discuss subjects that we may not want to broadcast to everyone else. Although the topics are not always heavy, sometimes we get on the call just to share a good laugh. The point is that we have gained a new level of trust and comfort in discussing any subject. Now, because of that, our relationship is stronger than ever by doing the work, getting beyond the surface to the security of our inner man. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Oh my goodness. What I learned from what you talked about was the necessity of tending to our relationships as we grow. We just can't simply toss them aside. Or if we do, we can expect dysfunction, no matter what that feeling is, some sort of dysfunction to creep in. So thank you for that. Tell me, now your relationship is good. Have you taught anyone else how to use this tool?
I wouldn't say I've set out to, I guess, necessarily teach it out, but I do stress the importance of having that necessary communication, that dialogue, whether it is through that card game or whatever works. That work for us may not necessarily work for someone else. I think it's really incumbent upon the person and that particular situation where find what works for them. Sometimes it could be just hanging out with other family members or friends, or like I said, it's gonna be different for everyone. And of course, when it happened for us, we were asking each other questions, and amongst rest of my family, I recall my sister, my mom, and there were tears that day. Some of the questions that I think really hit home, and maybe questions that we wanted answers to that we just never brought up. And I kind of lean towards whether I think that we just didn't want to confront it. Like we just maybe in our minds thinking like this may lead to something, I'll just leave it alone.
Wow.
Sometimes it's healthy to actually to dig into that, because it there may be some feelings that are locked in that maybe you just don't realize, been kind of holding it in for years, and then until someone really asks those specific questions to really unlock those feelings that may have been sitting inside for so long. And I think that's from that point is where true healing and understanding really comes in.
I think that it's amazing how that one simple act has allowed your relationship to grow beyond just the mechanics of being a man. Unfortunately, the mechanics of being a man seem to often boil down to very, very surface level idea. As a matter of fact, a man is often simply asked to provide, protect, and pursue sexual conquest. I had this conversation with Steve, who is a podcast host of the Shade Tree Intellectual. You are a founding member of your men's health group. You are a bibliophile. So many things, and you're autodidactic as well. It tickles me talking to Steve because you need a dictionary. At least I do. Quite often. Yeah, sometimes. But these words, this subject matter actually came directly from your heart because of something that you spoke while we were on a podcast. So I'm curious to see how you'll break this down. Lead the way.
Well, thanks, Coach, again for having me. And I'm just incredibly blessed to be able to be here and to have the kind of connections and conversations with a lot of just amazing, powerful, and beautiful men. So again, I wanted to thank you for putting this all together and asking me to co-host this with you. I'm incredibly honored. Yeah, as you said, I read a ridiculous amount of books, usually about 120 to 150 a year. And I am the host of the Shade Tree Intellectual on YouTube, where we discuss social situations and men's mental health. In September, I co-founded with a good friend of mine, Rick, the Men's Mental Health Collective. It's a small men's group here in near Salt Lake City, Utah, where we get together every other week and we just discuss the things that we have to deal with as men on a daily basis. And it brings a lot of topics up where men are often confused or just don't know what role they play in the world and how those roles factor into their happiness, right? When we look at the men's suicide rate here in the US and globally, it's massive. 3 out of 4 suicides are men. That's no small number. That number goes up when we lose our spouses to cancer or to divorce. We're 10 times more likely to commit suicide. The numbers everywhere get worse for men everywhere you go. And that's not to take away from the struggles of women or other people, but we do have to have that conversation about how men's mental health is affecting us as a global society of men. And some of those things come in the form of protect and to provide, and the things that we were taught to do as young boys and into manhood. One of the struggles that we face commonly, if not the largest, is what makes me a man, right? The underlying question that remains unasked and therefore unanswered is, where do I gain my personal value as a human being and as a man? The question plagues us from almost an early age when we begin to notice the similarities between ourselves and those we classify as men, i.e. our fathers, our uncles, our brothers, our compatriots in our life. Are we strong? Are we successful? Am I a man of integrity? What is honor? Right? These are all questions we all ask ourselves. Less easily answered, though, are the questions that are deeply personal to us. Am I allowed to feel? Can I feel sad? Can I cry and still retain my masculinity? Now, society for a long time has told us that the former answer, or the former question, the answer is a large and powerful yes. And we can be confident. We can be successful. We should be men of integrity. We should be men of honor. Right? The people around us depend on those things. But the second question is a little bit more difficult. And historically has been a big, ugly, unequivocal no. We're not allowed to feel, we're not allowed to feel sad. We're not allowed to cry. We're not allowed to show weakness. And these things do nothing but harm men and the people that those men have access to, our families, our children, our wives, our husbands, everybody. It affects everyone. Society has told us for a long time that men aren't supposed to be weak. But what does that mean to be weak? Crying doesn't make women weak, so why does it make boys and men weak? It makes no dang sense. We get teased as being soft, as being wussies, or even worse, cowards, if we dare to shed a tear in front of other people. I find this ridiculous. A ridiculous notion, at the very least, that for some reason feeling something makes us less than. Eventually that ridicule, though, it turns itself towards society's eyes as a judgmental beacons of acceptance and attractiveness. This being the most sinister of crimes committed against boys and men. Like, we have to live up to an expectation that is not our own. We begin to be taught to hide and suppress our feelings, answer them back with "I won't cry" or "I can't cry, not right now. I'll go to the bathroom," or "I'll wait to go to my car." Right? And I promise I will tie this in to provide and protect. Even though the urge to emote is strong, many of us, the voices of our fathers screams in our ears, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. You know, stop acting like your sister. Stop being a wussy and man up. You know, I didn't hit you that hard. Are you bleeding? No, then get up, throw some dirt on it and get back to work. You know, ask any man, and they'll give you the same story, and every man in the room will shake their heads in sympathetic experience. Like we've all shared that experience collectively as a group. So what happens when we reach our manhood? We begin to seek out, we begin to search out for that someone who will love us. But what is there really to love? Really, we're just taught what to be. We're not taught who to be. So you're just the same as the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. Strong, silent, confident, sometimes loud, but not really much different. So we go seeking who that is. And this is where sexual conquest comes into play. Sexual conquest for boys and men are the way that we feel ourselves out. Where do I belong in the hearts of the people that I want to be in a relationship with? Right? And that thereby informs us of where we gain our value as a provider or as a protector or as both. You know, it's often said that women seek out two different types of men, or one of two different types of men, or both, if you're lucky. One is the provider and one is the protector. Can you provide for me a comfortable life free of starvation with a home over our heads? Or can you protect me against the threats of the world? And these are the struggles that men face every day when trying to find out who they are. But these are surface level problems, right? If a woman is lucky, or if another man is lucky, if you happen to be gay, you get lucky and you get both. You get a provider and a protector in one, and you don't find those men single for very long. They are a rarity. They are a rare fruit, and we covet that rare fruit when we find it. And what does it mean to provide and protect, though? Like, what does that mean? But if you notice, there's not a whole lot of room in there for what am I to me? Like, I'm supposed to be a provider and a protector to you, but what am I to me? We search our whole life to find the value in ourselves to other people, but we don't search it for the value that we need to find within ourselves. And it's difficult to talk about that because even in adulthood, we still miss that connection. And by extension, it teaches us that our true worth and admiration comes from our disposability. And that's a hard sentence to come to terms with. But we're taught that our responsibility is to protect our family, our community, and our nation, to provide for our family and our community and our nation, and to die is the ultimate symbol of manliness. As Warren Farrell said in his book, The Myth of Male Power, is that history books are examples of patriarchy and dominance, when in reality, they're 500-page novels of male performativity. They teach us what our value is. It lies in our ability to conquer. Our value lies in our disposability to die. And if we're lucky, maybe we'll kill ourselves before an enemy has a chance. And I firmly believe that this is partially the reason why our suicide rate is so high. We feel like no one really truly cares about who we are. And we discussed this earlier about masks and wearing them. And the problem is that men don't feel comfortable taking that mask off, because then we become vulnerable, and vulnerable to us means weak. So what do we say when people ask us if we're okay? Say, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm straight. But we aren't. And a lot of men go back into the form of sexual conquest to find temporary value, temporary love, temporary affection, because we don't feel like we are worthy or valuable to have long-term love and affection in our lives. And when we do get into a relationship, because we were, and again, I'm going to say it again, it's not because we don't care about our partners, but we are viewed as cold, as heartless sometimes. And we're not taught to recognize the feelings that we were always taught to suppress. So our wives and our significant others wonder why we're so distant, or why we don't react to their emotions and their feelings the way that they expect it to, or expect us to. It's because we were never taught to address the emotions that we were always taught to suppress. So it should be no mystery as to why men have such a difficult time in emotional relationships. We weren't taught to be. And you can never recognize something that you were never allowed to experience. So where do we go from there? You know, we're left hanging on to pictures of our babies, of our wives, watching our checks be garnished to child support and alimony, wondering where the hell we went wrong. What did I do wrong? And this is one of the biggest topics that we have as men that we have to overcome, is where do we gain our personal value, and why does it have to reside within others? Why can it not reside within ourselves? That's it. Thank you, Coach.
My, oh my, oh my, oh my. You said a handful, a mouthful, and a heartful. We have Dr. 𝐌𝐄𝐍'𝐶, and he is the commissioner over our VIP event. But as we turn the corner and come to the end of our speakers, I want to hear from him what tips he has, just a few, to help us manage emotions naturally. Now, if you want to take his, class or something like that, you'll have to get with him a bit later. He is going to be kind enough to manage our VIP event. So if you're lucky enough to have one of those tickets, we're looking forward to spending time with you. But right now, without further ado, I shall bring up Dr. 𝐍'𝐶. Hello, Dr. 𝐍'𝐶. I think you are on mute, dear sir. Take yourself off mute. Take yourself off mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the long-windedness last time. How's it going?
It's great. So tell us more about the necessity of managing emotions naturally, and how does it become natural? Because if you were taught not to be emotionally intelligent, then how do you start learning how to be emotionally intelligent?
No, that's actually a really, really great question. One of the things I've realized just in my own life, when I talk about managing emotions naturally, I'm talking about doing it as though you have no other resources, right? That you can apply whatever it is you need in your own life using what you have, and not relying on anything external for the most part. A lot of it comes from my military background, of course, right? Throughout my service, we spend the entire day, the selfless service of at the needs of others, okay? And all day, every day, we're told what to wear, how to act, where to go. You're leaving here, going to this country, or whatever have you. And no matter where they put us, we have to be able to function accordingly, okay? Because that's the institution we signed up for. So one of the things I teach to military members about managing emotions is I give them certain tools, okay? One of the tools is the 5-second rule tool. It's from Mel Robbins, one of the guys I really respect. He's an author and a speaker. And basically, the 5-second rule is just this. It's because, your brain is wired to avoid risks and fear of change, okay? And when the thought comes to your mind of the things that you want to do, but that you haven't done because of the fear or resistance, If you wait 5 seconds, your brain will try to talk you out of it. And so what I teach military members is whenever a thought comes to your mind and it's something you have to do, something you got to get done, whether it's getting out of the bed, whether it is fixing yourself something to eat, whatever you know you have to do, right? Or you need to do rather. When that thought comes to your mind, you must act within the first 5 seconds of that thought entering your mind. Okay. And when that happens, that member then has a charge of energy, motivation, determination, the same as getting up at the same time every single day. Every single day I get up at 4:30 in the morning, no matter what. It does not matter. I do not hit a snooze. I do not roll over and wait or anything like that. I get up 4:30. It could be Saturday, coach. It could be Monday. It could be Wednesday. It does not matter. And one of the things that I've learned behind that is when I get up at the same time every single day, from an emotional standpoint, how I attack my day is based on what I tell myself I need to do from the start, from the time I wake up, from the time that alarm clock hits. Okay. That really jumpstarts my day. The breakfast jumpstarts my day. It helps to reduce the anxiety I have about my day as well, which in the military, a lot of us suffer from anxiety. Okay. As far as getting through the day and figuring out what it is we need to do. So the 5-second rule is one of the tools that I employ service members to use. Okay. The second one is just the positive triggers. And so using trigger phases and the words to change your perspective on your reality. Okay. Again, we're told what to do every single day from the time we wake up or put on that uniform to the end of the day. And we're military 24/7, but we have our duty time that we have to report in. And so you have to turn those phrases or changing using trigger phases, and words to change your perspective of your reality. And that's using trigger phases like this too shall pass, or in a blink of an eye, everything will change, or the experiences we have and an unexpected blessing in your life, right? This is a great character building experience, okay? And all it does, at least for the population I work with, is help them to gain control as to what situation has happened to them. But yet, when I say gain control, I'm talking about how they respond. So we look at the triggers, and I get it. Triggers do affect the box that we have from within. And I can explain that a little later, but I'm gonna use the word box, emotional box that we have within. But it's all about how you respond. And when you're in a military environment or you're in a stressful situation, everybody's looking at how you respond to the situation. So having positive triggers is something that another tool that we use, right? And then the neuro linguistic program. So restructuring your feelings. And this makes a lot of my individuals a little uncomfortable because we do get into the feeling aspect of things. But when you're re-experiencing a situation that triggers an unpleasant emotion that you do not want, right? Rather than addressing the content of your thoughts and emotions, we can focus on the structure, all right? At least that's what we try to do, okay? And again, I can go into a deeper in depth about that process, but most people are not aware that there's a structure to emotions or their feelings, all right? So the structure isn't the same thing as a psychological response, though. I want to make that clear. Although sometimes that's part of it, the structure is more like energy or symbolic images that the mind creates that represents the emotional experiences to you. Okay, so these structures are unique to you and probably did not know you even had them. A lot of, when I'm speaking with the individuals, they didn't even know it was there, right? So this activity is just, I ask them a series of questions, and then the first answer that comes to their mind, they cannot think about it. They cannot try to, let me just process this. No, it's really the pace about these questions that come to mind for them. Okay, so they think of these situations that triggers an emotional response that they tend to have regularly, and that is unpleasant. And so feel the feeling. Now is what we go over. Where does it start? The color it is it transparent? Does the size of that problem change, or does it move one area to the other, or as time goes by? What shape is it? I have them going in depth on answering these questions because we literally are trying to change their emotional their emotional responses, or restructuring, excuse me, their feelings, right? So again, that's another tool that we use in this program. And then we have one that's entitled anchoring. How much time do I have? Can I go through each of these or no?
Well, actually, that is something that we are going to share in the VIP room. So
Okay.
yeah.
Don't get me excited, because I'll be going in. I'm just like, wait a minute, let me keep going. So
it's very exciting. That is a benefit of being a VIP. Speaking of a VIP, one of the things that you got to do as a VIP, as you got to come up and be a part of the panel. And so here is one of our VIP guests. David, how are you? You are on mute.
I am doing well. How are you? And
Great.
I've been so privileged to just be here and listen to everybody speak. I'm so humbled by this experience. It's been lovely, and I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Do you have a question for any of our panelists?
I mean,
it's a lot, right?
It is, and I just want to know, like, how, like, one thing I actually love about this is gonna sound so like conceited, but I love being the youngest person in the room, in any room really, because I just get to learn and hear about things and just like take notes for like my future. And so I just want to know, like, how are you all doing this? Like, I don't understand how you guys just, like I consider Kenneth one of my mentors, and he knows, like, we speak every week, especially on our podcast, Community Coalition Show, and I just, like, there's a moment every week where I'm just like, bro, how do you do this? How are you not freaking out 24/7? Or how are you not just screaming into the void every week? Or every day, every waking moment.
Screaming into the void every week.
Every waking moment.
Well, who says we don't?
What would be the reason? Let me ask you this. Let me jump in. I'm curious. Okay. What specific reason? I mean, there are many, right? But I'm curious from your perspective. Can you give me a specific incident or reason that one might scream into the void? What have you seen or heard?
Just being overwhelmed with everything, juggling so many things at the same time. Just like thinking about family, thinking about work, thinking about how you have to, even in all of that, you have to eat. You have to just remember to, and in all of that, you have to remember to keep your composure. Because if you don't, then you're seen as an angry person, and then no one wants to rock with you. I really genuinely don't understand how you guys do it. Because I'm barely able to do it.
First and foremost, having an emotional, available circle of friends and loved ones who are capable of listening to you, not criticizing you, rather helping you. Right. So my wife does an immense amount of work around the house and with my son, because I work 40 to 50 hours a week. Plus I go to school, probably another 15 to 16 hours a week. Plus I have all of this, plus I have my writing, plus I have all these other things that I'm doing. Plus I need to spend a good significant portion of my time with my son. Plus I have family issues. Plus I've got to fix the house, the yard. You know, there's so many things. So really the thing that I can impress upon you is finding a partner, if that's what you choose to do, but finding a partner who is capable of sharing your life with you and helping displace that load. And in return, you can do the same thing for them too. Right. So finding people who are emotionally available and accessible and willing to help you along your journey, and being able to be honest and sincere with those people Like I can tell my wife, hey, I'm having a really hard day. She'll ask me, do you want to talk about it or do you want to fix it? Sometimes I'll just be like, I just want to take a nap. All right, cool. Go take a nap. I'll wake you up in an hour or 2 hours. Right. I don't feel guilt. Right. She doesn't make me feel guilty for having that moment where I need to just like, bleh. You know what I mean? So I think having those people close around us is really super important. Now, I'm an atheist, but a lot of the men here are Christians. We got a couple pastors, right? There's a valuable lesson in there for people of faith, for men of faith to rely on God or Jesus, whoever you choose it to be. That's also another avenue that you can use to help kind of assuage the stress of everyday life as a man, right? There's multiple different ways, but the important thing is finding the avenue that works. It doesn't just look good, but it works too.
Right.
That's what my recommendation is. Find loving, caring people who are emotionally available, willing to help.
Right. And I think it's very important to just like when I'm in a relationship, I like to talk and I like someone that likes to talk. And so in that, you're able to like weed out, oh, I can't talk to you because you're not willing to entertain a conversation of this magnitude. And so I just think it's very important to communicate, because if you can't communicate, then why are we here?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
I just think that's a very important part of being in really a relationship with anybody, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a platonic relationship, or it could be your parents, it could be your kids. And I don't even have kids yet, but I have nieces and nephews to where I can speak to and see like where their minds are at, like at their young age. And I can see, oh, hey, the world is literally your oyster for you to explore. And I love seeing that in kids.
Yeah,
if I could add to that, I don't know how old you are, but
I'm 29.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess one thing I'll share, I think that to me that I find very profound and may help relate to what you're speaking about is that you definitely want to keep that circle. You want to keep a circle of friends, and with that, I mean, we all have friends, maybe coworkers that we may share certain things with, depending on who it is. But when it comes to like the real, deep things that we want to share that we may not necessarily share out with everyone else, that so some of the more, I'll say, intimate details, that's not something you're going to share out. Those are typically will be reserved for our circle, who we keep in that tight circle. Right. And for me, one of my best friends that I grew up with, I grew up in the church. I mean, from going from like Sunday school back in Bronx, New York, together. His father's a pastor. So I just remember Sundays after church, like we'd go to each other's houses and stuff and just hang out and church camp, everything. Even up to this day, both of us own families and everything. We still try to keep up with each other. And from just having that bond and being able to, and even sometimes, of course, as I just mentioned, like we both have our own families, responsibilities. We not be able to talk and everything like how we used to, but when we do connect, it's almost like we didn't drop a beat. We still connect because like we just know each other. We're in sync. And sometimes, you do need that. You don't necessarily. I think a lot of society, especially when it comes to like social media, you kind of measure by how many quote unquote friends you have. I'll tell you right now, I don't have 3,000 friends. I don't know if anyone else, but for me, like real friends that I would really share those details with, I could really count on one hand. And that's okay. I mean, and for some maybe more. That's cool, but I know for me. I think you do want to keep, that circle tight, be mindful of those friends that you want to, like you share those details, those experiences with those, you know, and having someone to listen to you. Sometimes you just need someone to, you know, because also keeping some of those things bottled up is not healthy. It's not good for you. So
Right.
having an outlet, having someone to be able to talk, and someone that can reciprocate and listen to you and provide the feedback that you need, and not that you want to hear what you need.
Right.
So sometimes, you know, you may have to, and that's what I think the real job of a best friend is. You know, it's not just to agree with everything you say, but sometimes they gotta, you know, do some course correction to it and say, hey, what's wrong with you? You need to come on, snap out of it.
Right. You need somebody to
That's
check you.
Right, exactly. And that's, to me, I think a true measure of a friend is to, you know, to be there for you, listen to you, get you back in line when you fall out of it. And, you know, and also just, you know, have fun with, you know, someone that, you know, that understands you and that you can just mesh with, you know, at any point in time.
Right. And another thing I actually thought of while you guys were speaking was that there was a time to where I loved somebody, and then there was a time that was when I was younger, and then I realized that there was another time to where I was in love with somebody. And I find as much as those two can be the same, they're very different. And I'm starting to realize that as I'm starting to grow up. And I
The
just think
importance is being able to bounce those ideas off of other people too, to make sure you're doing what is true and correct, right?
Right.
Like you got to be able to process these things, and you know, there's this thing called the central problem of the problem of central knowledge, right? Is the inability of one person to control everything around them.
Right.
So we want to be able to have access to people that we can bounce ideas off of and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. This is a good idea. And your friend can be like, that's a horrible idea. Don't do it. Right. Or they can be like, that's a brilliant idea. You should do that. And then you've got a cheerleader in your corner. Like these are the things that make impactful differences for men to move forward.
And then in that, you start fleshing out the idea with them. And I think that's very important. Because you definitely need those friends to be like, oh, you can actually do this, or you are actually looking at this from a technical standpoint, so that there's a way that you can actually do this. That's very important.
So I have a question for you, gentlemen, and what I'm looking for is a direct answer and then a very brief description of why you answered that way. This is the question. Are the principles that you learned as a man productive for in a relationship, or counterproductive for being in a relationship?
Boy,
you said principles that we've learned. I guess we would have to define where we've learned those principles, because we've been speaking of manhood and from our different perspectives as it pertains to how we've related to our dads and then our life experiences. But when you speak toward the principles that we've learned, principles from what perspective?
So did that answer, the reason why I'm asking you these questions individually, because it's not a collective answer. I assure you that the things that Steve learned about being a man, although similar, I happen to know you both well enough that they're not the same. They're similar, but they're not the same. And so what I'm asking you gentlemen, as you personally, the things you learned about being a man and how to be a man, is it productive towards being in a relationship, or is it counterproductive for being in a relationship?
If I can jump in on this one,
you can.
There are two things. The first, we talked earlier about men as the emotional anchors of their family. And one of the principles that I learned was that, counterproductive, by the way, was that to be the emotional anchor, what you had to do was shut off your emotions. You had to quit being emotional so that when everything was chaotic around you, you didn't become chaotic too. And no matter who was upset or crying or whatever, you were a rock. And the problem with anchors and rocks and all those things is that they have no emotions. They don't express emotions. They don't respond to emotions. They just anchor you. And so, as we've said, that's really good for everyone else, but not necessarily so good for you. The other counterproductive, and this one I find interesting about myself because I've worked with a lot of women who dealt with a lot of abuse in relationships. And one of the things that I've consistently said is the worst thing that happens is that sometimes women take on this mindset that they deserve the abuse. And I have to say that I found myself doing the same thing. There was a kind of emotional indebtedness that I felt that said, because of my faults and fallibilities and all the other things, I deserved the emotional abuse that I experienced in relationships. And I had to write off that debt. I had to say, you know what, that's paid. I'm not going to keep paying on that. That was a hard thing to learn, though, but I think that it happens more frequently than we think so. But those are two things that definitely impacted me on a individual and personal basis.
Excellent, excellent. While we're at it, I hear this, and this is what I think should be addressed. The clinician says, I believe men are the moral anchor of the family, not the emotional anchor. And that's to your point, Mike. It is very difficult to be an emotional anchor if you don't understand your own emotions and you've been taught to ignore them. How could it be possible for you to be the emotional anchor?
Well, and that's the other thing too. I take a little bit of exception to that. When I was studying public relations, somebody asked me if the public relations person in an organization should be the moral conscience of the organization. And I said, absolutely not. No one person can handle that. And I don't think, and I think that's true of, and I'm going to get probably, there are people who have very different views on this, and I respect that, but I don't think the man can be the sole emotional anchor or moral anchor or any other anchor for a family. I think everybody in the family has to contribute to that. And I think when you put that on one person, you're the keeper of the flame on this one. That's where the troubles really begin. I think everyone contributes to the moral fiber of the family. Are we leaders? Absolutely. But a good leader also knows how to follow. And so I think you can't separate those things. I guess what I'm objecting to is the idea, honestly, of people as anchors. And I think that's part of what gets men into trouble.
Well, I'd like to echo that with Mike, is that when we say that men are the moral anchor of the family, we're repeating the same mistake again, right? That puts an undue burden on the man to do something that perhaps the man is not adequately prepared or trained or taught to do. The whole point is to move away from the idea that it's man's responsibility to do anything other than to look inside himself and find his intrinsic value within himself. Right now, when we talk about responsibilities in families, I mean, there's no way that a man and his wife, or a man and his husband. I mean, how can we expect just one person in the family to take on that mantle of responsibility? It should be both parents first and foremost, who are communicating effectively to create those boundaries of morality within the family. Right? It should be a work of progress, a work of companionship, of communication for those two people to do that in the family, right? If we don't, then we're going to be making the mistake again of issuing man or men a responsibility that is a burden upon them that they may not have the emotional ability to do so. And that's what I'm trying to get away from. I'm trying to get away from these expectations that men are supposed to be one thing and one thing only. I refuse it. I refute it. I take umbrage with it. I don't want it, and I will not support it. So I want men to discover their own way. I want men to discover their own value and their own belief systems and their own deep intrinsic love of themselves. Because for a long time we weren't allowed to.
You know, if I could just weigh in really quickly, every household, every dynamic has its own makeup. Because I can hear both sides. I hear Steve, and I think it's Mike. I think I hear both your points of view as it pertains to the man and the quote unquote anchor. If we're having trouble with that terminology, just view it as such, as terminology, but just let's grab the principle of it all and understanding that there are certain constructs within the household. As much as we would like to see some things transition, we must realize that the reality is this, that when a husband and his wife are in the home, there are often times that the wife is looking to that husband and say, man, what do I do? And so I think what we must recognize is, as we look to say we don't want to try and box men into a certain role, so to speak, within the home as being the anchor. I do understand what you're saying, Steve, is that many of us aren't equipped for that space. Where we find the trouble in the relationship between the husband and wife is when the wife is solely expecting the husband to have all of the answers when the times get tough. And he may need to lean into her, where they can walk and say, okay, I don't have the answer, but how about we figure this thing out together and we work together and maintain some level of sanity in our home, because this is a situation that neither one of us has ever experienced before. Now, I think that when we as men begin to understand, have that emotional IQ where we can actually say, I don't know, then that moves us into this space of being able to identify who we are becoming as men, as I think you're trying to push us towards, Steve, with with your point of view. More than anything, if we can embrace our relationships and understand that we both have our strengths, but as it pertains to becoming the quote unquote anchor, I think one of the things that God has equipped us with in many cases as men is that the ability to compartmentalize and not to allow our emotions to run together, where we can step back and look at the big picture. And even in the things that we were taught as kids, like my dad taught me that if you are working on a car, he taught me how to work on cars. If it's hard to get that part off, son, don't keep fighting with that part. Step back, take a deep breath. You may have to walk away from it, but come back, and then you'll see that you may be looking at it from a different angle. When we're able to process our emotions in a healthy manner, then we are able to be the anchors in our home that we're called to be. But like you said, man, all of us aren't equipped in that capacity, and it does take work. It does take us connecting with men who have a good grip on emotional IQ, so that we're able to uh, stabilize our own emotions and to embrace our emotions and not to run from them, but to understand that these are gifts. Our emotions are gifts, and we don't have to shove them off to the side, but to understand where they fit and how to incorporate them in our lives where they're healthy, and that everyone can embrace and enjoy the emotions that I have right now. And so we can be that anchor, but we don't have to box ourselves in and saying, I have all the answers, but we can work together when we have enough emotional stability to be able to say, but sometimes I just don't know.
Oh, you're saying exactly what I was saying. in a way that I was not. No, you're hitting,
man. We could
right. Exactly. No, you are hitting it exactly where I'm trying to attack it from. You're hitting it dead on. And I love the way that you put that, because you're taking something that I had a difficult time translating, and you translated it perfectly into what I was meaning. You're right, absolutely right. Like this is supposed to be a journey. Not every single person is going to have all the necessary tools to get the work done, right? Like you couldn't have just, because I'm a mechanic, so I know where you're coming from here. I needed to learn from someone, right? I needed to learn from someone who did it before and did it before them, right? There's kind of a saying in my group of friends is that, I will always honor and respect those who come before me, right? Because they learned the lessons that I can now gain my experience from. Kind of like, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, the gentleman with the gray coat and the red shirt. Like that's exactly what I was talking to earlier is like having access to men or just people in general. I don't want to exclude everybody else, but having access to other people who have lived that experience before. And I wanted to direct this at Dr. Williams, because I think he had a really great perspective that I really wanted to touch on here, which is, I said it in the comments. I do not set the example. I am the example. What does that mean? Like, what does that mean? People in the comments are like, what does that mean? Right? It means I'm not going to tell you how to be. I'm going to show you what I expect. Right? There's a difference in that. One is I'm preaching to you. One is I'm showing you. Right? So my children will not remember me preaching to them, but they will remember daily the example that I gave them when I walked through the world as a confident man of integrity and honor. They will remember that, much like Pastor Jeffrey remembers of his father. Like that is the truest statement that I can give any one person, is mind how you behave and mind how you talk, but understand the importance of how you are walking out into the world as a man. Oh, you're on mic. You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, you're
on. I believe the old line that, it's not what you know that impresses people, it's how you make them feel. And I think that is so important. And back to the coach's question of, did you learn or did you not? Oh, absolutely. I learned everything about fatherhood not to do. And in that, I now lead, the father of my three boys, by not being like this, by not doing this, by not doing that, because I saw it all wrong. And I broke the generational curse of just about 3 years or 3 generations that go through this abuse cycle until somebody breaks the cycle. And I think it's so important that we work in the role that we're in. But we need to realize that if you're married, if you have a wife or a significant other, that it's a partnership and it's not 50-50. It's 100%, 100%. And I think it's so important that, for instance, when you go to a Y in a road, I used to have my wife, my previous wife, in the car with me, and I would come up to the road and I couldn't ever turn back enough to see if another car was coming. Every time we got to that spot in the road, she would always lean up and go, "You're good." But together, we made that journey and that curve absolutely perfection every time, because she saw a different view than what I did from my point of where I was sitting in the car because of the blind side. That's the way it needs to be in life, that we have to, I think men have that need to lead. We have the calling to lead, but it's not a mandated dictatorship. It is a partnership of love, compassion, and understanding. And we're going to learn this and go on this journey together. And not to get too biblical, but that's the reason the bone came out of the side, not out of the head, not out of the foot. That woman is supposed to be at my side. I'm not over, I'm not under. We're together on the journey hand in hand.
Amen.
Oh, that's really good. I personally like that. I also like you get an A because you address my question, so you get an A. Yeah. Oh my goodness, this has been fantastic. I am just going to put each of you on solo for a brief closing remark, and that will be fantastic. I am going to start with you, Pastor Jeffrey. Here you go.
One of the things I believe that is an unnecessary battle now in today's culture is manhood itself. It's okay to embrace how God has created us. We've been created in a way that uh, we have our own process, our own way of thinking, and that's okay with that. Our women have their own way of processing and their own way of thinking, and that's okay. Embracing how God has created us is the right thing to do. Now, the challenge that we all have is how do I carry forward with this challenge that has been laid before me? It's a good thing to be intentional with how we seek to break the cycles in our families. It's a good thing to cultivate relationships to with other men to determine how do I carry myself as a man going forward. It's a good thing to be intentional in how we communicate with our children and to be the example and to also teach as we move along. Teaching is not preaching. Teaching works with preaching, but teaching also lives out what you live out what you're teaching as well too, and that will have a massive impact as we move along in life. And so, in my closing thoughts, I want to encourage us as men. It's okay. It's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay broken. But we must strive to find what God wants us to, who God wants is calling us to be, and have healthy relationships with us.
That was absolutely beautiful. And without further ado, let me add for us here Mr. Sugar Ray, sir. Oh, you're on mute or something's going on.
Yeah,
There we
I
go.
was on mute for a second. I guess I want to thank you for putting this amazing panel, this amazing event together, and to all the gentlemen that are on here. Wow, such wisdom, such passion, such transparency, and for everybody that is tuned in, thank y'all, because what I want to say personally is that we're all out here to leave a legacy. I'm not here for I'm not here to please anyone else. I'm here to make sure that my legacy is is intact. I'm here to make sure that my son personally has that example of what success is. I have to unlearn those things that I've learned. There are certain things that I've learned and I'll never go back to doing again. Each story touched a certain part of my heart because I can relate to each and every one of them. But I'll say that there is, when it comes down to relationships, my relationships have been, some of them have been great as a result of me having the example of parents that have been together for almost 50 years. And some of them have failed because when we sat down, we realized that we came from different paradigms. Nothing against the other person, but it's just that their paradigm was not the same that I came from. I learned that a man is to be a provider, a protector, and that he is supposed to, yeah, he's supposed to hide certain emotions. But I've also learned to unlearn that, and that be my, if you can't be my rib, then I don't want you to be in that place, because there is something and someone else that is probably a better fit for you as well as for me. And that's the level of maturity that I had to get to. So I will say To everybody tuned in, there's not just one dimension of a man. There are so many different dimensions of men. We're intellectuals, we're athletes, we are bravado, we're hunters, we're farmers, we are we have our moments where we just got to go in the corner and cry. But as a man, be strong enough in your masculinity that you understand that it's okay. As previous gentleman said, as a pastor just said, it's okay to not be okay. But when you don't feel like you're okay, make sure that you surround yourself with a circle that can get you back to who you truly are. Love y'all.
That is beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. All right. All right. Uh-oh, wrong one. I'm going to learn how to work this, right? Here we go. All right, Dr. Williams.
Hey, it was great to be here. Appreciate you inviting me and letting me be part of a group. And I want to look at each of the guys in their eyes and just tell you, everybody on this panel, I love you. And I appreciate you. We all have different beliefs, different views, different stances, but I respect all of those. And it's great to be able to be together and looking for one vision together, and that's to have men have better lives. So I just want to leave you with the thought of that if you need help, get it. We all need help. There's nothing weak about asking for help, and don't try to do this alone. That was my biggest mistake, because when you're alone and you close the door and the dark lights come, the lights start darkening and you get to a real dark place. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for you, yourself, your family, your children, your work. There's no goodness in any of that. Reach out, look for hope, and receive the help that you truly, truly deserve. And we all do, because we all have issues. We just need to deal with them and face them and handle them the best we can. Thank you.
So powerful, so powerful. And you want to know what? I had to bring up Joseph, because that's exactly what he did.
Yes. Yeah, same here. Thank you, Coach, for this platform allowing us to be on here, and I'm just thankful to be amongst this great panel. I have learned a lot just listening to the stories. I know some of these I may have already heard of, I guess during our rehearsals, but it doesn't take away from the impact and the strength that these stories do have, and it also ultimately just makes you either confirm or make you start thinking about things, whether within your own relationships, and biggest thing that I've learned, having positive relationships, relationships that worked well, relationships that failed. I'd say probably one of the biggest things too is or to echo the previous comments, was that it is okay to seek help, and to know that you don't have to play the role of Superman. You're not considered less than if you show emotion. It's if you're feeling like it's too much, that's okay. Reach out for help. Like, we all need help. We all need assistance. We all need someone to reach out to, someone to talk to, someone to just hear us vent, and vice versa. Sometimes we need to be that voice for someone, that listening ear for someone too. So just I'll say I'll just leave it at this, that the biggest thing is whatever it is, especially as men, it's okay to seek assistance, to seek help. It doesn't make you any less of a man doing so. If anything, it shows great strength and maturity, knowing the area that you do need help in, and you're taking the appropriate steps to correct that, and to really to strengthen that, honestly. So and that's all I have. Thank you, everyone. Great panel. I love to do this again. So happy Father's Day.
Yes, happy Father's Day to you. Mike.
Hi, sorry, phone technical difficulties, but thank you, Coach. I appreciate you having me here. I really want to follow up on that book idea. I think that's an awesome idea. I guess a lot of what I took out of today from hearing these various stories is if you hadn't been where you were, you wouldn't be where you are. And so, yeah, everyone goes through their traumas. Everyone has their things that they face, and how you get through those and how we get through those as men in particular. I appreciate having a forum about that because I do think it's important. And really it comes down to, I think, being willing to open yourself up to your own weaknesses, face those, your own insecurities, and share those with other people. And you're likely to find out you're much stronger than you think you are.
Well said. Well said. All right, Dr. Lay. Dr. Lay, you're on mute. You have to take yourself off mute. There we go.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Uh-huh.
Great. Listen, thanks so much for having me on. It was great listening to the guys and listening and reading the chat and seeing people get involved. And I think emotional management is so important, and you heard it echo throughout everyone's story. And one of the things I've taken from this is that emotional responsibility and accountability. Having accountability, I think, really helps individuals, and in this case, men, make sound decisions about where they move next in their journey when they encounter a negative situation. Looking at self first, being honest with yourself, trusting your decision making, and respecting your next move, I think, is a huge benefit to managing emotions, but also, moving forward for men. I would say, at least in my journey and working with men as much as I do now, I would say that if we are going to change or shift our way of thinking about masculinity, about being men, we do have to accept, where we come from, and where we are today, and where we're trying to go. We actually have to accept that. And so this has been such a learning experience for myself, and I can't wait to see more of these. I think we created a space. Coach, you created a space, and all of the guys who are actually doing the work are creating spaces, and more men will become comfortable with who they are, so that they'll be better people for others. And so thank you so much for having me on, and I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity.
100% my pleasure. I cannot wait to see what you are going to do in the green room. It's going to be magnificent.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm excited too. Boy, oh boy. I got a nice healthy amount of Kleenex over here on the side of my desk, because I'm sitting here and I'm listening to all these men, and I'm hearing their voices, I'm hearing their experiences, and you get emotional when you no longer feel alone. You'll see behind me the book called The Myth of Male Power. The first time I read that, I was 4 pages in, and I just begin to weep in my truck, because it was the first time in my life I ever felt like I wasn't the only man that felt the things that I felt. So one of the questions that was posed somewhere, I can't remember where, but it was along the lines of how do I make the change between what I am now and where I want to be, or the environment that I'm in right now is not conducive to where I want to be in the future. Well, you have to make that change. And you do that by exemplifying the relationship that you want to have with others. You tell your brothers, hey, I love you. right? You start to exemplify the loving and caring and compassionate man that you want to be. And always understanding that the three hardest words to speak in the human language isn't "I love you," it's "I don't know." Because we don't like to admit that we don't know something that we don't know. And we need to get comfortable with that word, those words, "I don't know." And that's how we can ask others, and we can invite others into our lives. And when we invite others into our lives, they have a vested interest in our lives. They have emotionally invested into our lives. And that's how we build connections. And also understanding that you are not the sum of your trauma. You are not what others made you. You have the ability and the capacity to be something greater, to be something more beautiful, to be something more compassionate, and to be someone who you can love. Because at the end of the day, when you go to sleep and you lay your head on that pillow, you are the one staring at the back of your eyelids. And if that picture is not what makes you feel good, it's time to change. It's time to make those changes in your lives. And I am so proud and honored and privileged to have been a part of this, Coach. I am so short of words on how to describe that appreciation and love and admiration for all the men that have came here today, and primarily for the effort that you yourself put into this, Coach Love. I don't think any of us could really put into words how important this was to do, how well you put it together. And I think that's evidenced by the comments in the YouTube channel of no, I don't want it to be over yet. Everybody is loving this, and they're loving what you did, and they're loving what these men are bringing to the table, what they're offering with their wisdom and their light and their grace. I'm been on the verge of tears since we started this, and I am no less manly for admitting that. So I just want to share my appreciation with you, Coach, and with the men that came here. I love all of you. Thank you for letting me be a part of this and being able to have these conversations with you guys. And again, I love the idea of a book.
Of course, of course. You know what? I have to say, I already knew that this was part of our path, right?
Yeah.
You know, you don't bring this kind of energy together and not know the next steps for that energy. All of you gentlemen have homework if you look in the email. As it relates to your article and things of that nature, guys who are watching this did not come out of nowhere. We have been working on this project, oh my God, for months upon months upon months, and it shows. I thank you for bringing your best. I thank you for bringing your hearts. I thank you for bringing your truth and authenticity. You guys have been amazing. Thank you, Steve, for this kind of started off just by me listening to your heart and other gentlemen that were coming to the panel, and I was listening to the information. I was listening to the journeys of men, and then I started to dig up the statistics and seeing how suicide was 20x across the world, not just America, but the world. And that is why this had to be a global positive masculinity campaign. I cannot allow any little boy to grow up believing that all he's going to be is a paycheck for someone. All he's going to be is a protector of someone. And the best that he can think of out of life is sexual conquest. I hate to say this, but it is in our religions as well. One that comes to mind is that you get 40 versions. And I'm not poo-pooing on any particular religion, but what counts towards a man as his desires, as what he wants to really achieve. Men are whole people. They're full-fledged human beings, and they have emotions, they have thoughts, hopes, dreams that truly just belong to their inner man.
Yeah.
And for me, that is what's important here, that we start to look at men as full human beings, women as well. But right now, what I'm focusing on and what this mission is about is men feeling and understanding that they are full human beings. I want to thank some folks. Here is what I want to do. I want to thank Vega Montez for providing his music. I also want to thank Jesse the Tree Top for his song Purple and providing that for us. I want to thank the people over at ACES Matter. They do this kind of work daily. They're all about helping people understand their adverse childhood experiences. I'm going to give a special thanks to Dr. Lay for being the commissioner for us in our green room. That is absolutely amazing. And without further ado, I want to thank our audience. You guys have been amazing. I've been watching the chat both here on YouTube as well as on LinkedIn and Facebook. I do understand that everybody can't always see everyone else's comments, but I can see them. And so I think that's wonderful. In addition, if you're watching us on replay, we are still thinking about you. #replay on that. I also want to thank the folks over at Global FM. You guys are amazing, and I appreciate you. And without further ado, I'm simply going to say bye-bye for now.
It gets easier.
Huh?
Every day it gets a little easier.
Yeah?
But you gotta do it every day. That's the hard part. But it does get easier.
Okay.
Some days I got nothing. Got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Yeah, I got a lot to say, but some days I got nothing. Nothing, yeah. Never stuck in the past tense. Barbed wire hurdles, I passed them. Shiesty cats, we outlast them. Mike said, never let them grind you down. If you shine for now, then you could rise to the crown. But I don't need that hat, just loving light in the weed pack. I've seen my family relapse, fall to the ground with knees cracked. They rise again like suns with a vengeance. My lungs, they get replenished when the hope is reinvented. I've been venting to my friends about death and whatever is next. I get a lot of answers, but it doesn't change the quest. I'm strange at best, sort of hurt at worst, but the wound doesn't measure the worth. I watch rain fall and burst and then the sky turns purple. Verbally discovering my virtue, I sing past my curfew and chew up the souls of whoever tries to hurt you. Yeah, I got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Yeah, I got a lot to say, but some days I got nothing. Some days I got nothing. Got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Yeah, I got a lot to say, but some days I got nothing. Nothing, yeah. Never stuck in the past tense. Barbed wire hurdles, I passed them. Shiesty cats, we outlast them. Mike said, never let them grind you down. If you shine for now, then you could rise to the crown. But I don't need that hat, just love and light in the weed pack. I've seen my family relapse, fall to the ground with knees cracked. They rise again like suns with a vengeance. My lungs, they get replenished when the hope is reinvented. I've been venting to my friends about death and whatever is next. I get a lot of answers, but it doesn't change the quest. I'm strange at best, sort of hurt at worst, but the wound doesn't measure the worth. I watch rain fall and burst and then the sky turns purple. Verbally discovering my virtue, I sing past my curfew and chew up the souls of whoever tries to hurt you. Yeah, I got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Got a lot to say, some days I got nothing. Yeah, I got a lot to say, but some days I got nothing.
Happy Father's Day, everyone.